On the day the results were announced, I went to pick up my drunk elder brother. But I accidentally overheard him asking his close friend Pei Wangja, "Now that you've placed first in the imperial exams, isn't it time to propose to that girl you've been hiding?" Pei Wangja's voice was tinged with alcohol as he scoffed. No parental blessing, no matchmaker's word. Just fooling around. Nothing serious. I stood outside the screen gripping my handkerchief for dear life. 2 years of love, secretly pledging ourselves to each other. So it was all just fooling around. The servant bringing wine pulled open the screen, instantly exposing me to everyone's sight. My elder brother Meng Shun froze for a moment, then quickly pulled me inside. "It is so late. Why are you here?" I held back the bitterness in my heart and forced myself to speak. "The family sent a carriage to pick you up, and I happened to be craving pastries from Fuyao Tower, so I tagged along. The pastries were just an excuse. I simply wanted to see Pei Wangja as soon as possible." The results were announced during the day. Meng Shun had passed the imperial examination and was celebrating with a few close friends. Naturally, Pei Wangja wouldn't be absent from such an occasion. After the exams, he had accompanied his father on a military campaign and only returned to the city 2 days ago. We hadn't had the chance to meet yet. Having finally found an excuse, I spent 2 hours at home grooming and dressing up, arriving here brimming with joy. Yet I never expected to hear such humiliating words, and Pei Wangja, whom I had been longing for day and night, now wore golden flowers and a black gauze cap, draped in red brocade, a spirited young man in his prime. Yet, the moment he saw me, his smile faded, his gaze evasive. Meng Shun straightened his expression and waved for the dancing girls to withdraw. Summonon teased, "Oh, now that little sister's here. US brothers can't have any fun anymore." Meng Shun poured me a cup of tea and scolded with a smile, "Such vulgar language. Don't corrupt my little sister, she has never been to places like this. You are so protective of your sister. No wonder she is still unmarried. I bet no brother-in-law would be good enough for you, right?" Meng Shun looked around the room, his gaze finally landing on the silent Pei Wangja. Among everyone here, only Wangja would barely pass. The legitimate son of Duke Pei, dignified and handsome, and now the new top scholar. But, after hearing what you just said, it is true that heartless men are often scholars. Forget it. It was just a joke. But Pei Wangja's expression turned cold. He raised his wine cup and drained it in one gulp. His gaze briefly swept past me, then quickly withdrew as he said, "Stop talking nonsense. Ah Shun's sister is my sister too." What a sister indeed. I stared blankly at Pei Wangja, my eyes gradually growing sour. Everyone knew he had a sweetheart he kept hidden away. Every time he went to a restaurant, amidst his friends' teasing, he would pack up some pastries that women love to eat. The fine white fox he shot during hunting. No matter how many noble young ladies wanted the fur, he politely declined them all. The clumsily embroidered, worn and faded sachet at his waist had never been taken off. Even Meng Shun once said, "Pei Wangja has gone mad, treating an ugly as hell sachet like a treasure. Just because the Lai family's youngest son touched it, if we hadn't held him back, he would have rushed to the Li residence to demand an explanation. TSK gifts from a sweetheart really are different." What they didn't know was that the so-called sweetheart was me. All those pastries were sent into my hands through the back door of the Meng residence. The fox fur cloak now rests on the chaise lounge in my room. The sachet was also made by my hands, treasured by Pei Wangja as if it were precious. Although our dynasty has open customs and men and women sitting together is common, unmarried men and women still cannot privately exchange gifts. As a noble lady, how could I not understand this? But Pei Wangja was too wonderful. So wonderful that even knowing it would disgrace my family's honor, I was willing to secretly be with him. Just because he said the legitimate daughter of Chief Minister Meng must marry an accomplished man, and he would announce it to the world when he tops the imperial exam, marrying me in grand style. I believed this without a doubt, until I just heard his words. Just playing around. Xiaoxi. In my daze, my brother suddenly called me. "Why are you looking at Brother Pei?" I hurriedly withdrew my gaze, pretending to lower my head and drink tea. Everyone present teased. Wangja is still the best at winning girls' hearts. Xiaoxi's eyes are completely fixed on him. Not only winning hearts but also breaking them, huh? Little Shi didn't hear just now. Your brother Pei has a secret lover. We all thought he was head over heels for her. But he just said the girl insisted on clinging to him, that it was nothing but a romantic fling. And he never intended to propose. TSK. When us brothers asked which family's lady she was, you wouldn't say. Could it be her family background is too shameful to mention? Only fit to be kept as a mistress by you, the top scholar. A woman like that who secretly fooled around with men outside. Utterly shameless. Who cares about her family background? Just have your fun and toss her aside. Enough. Pei Wangja interrupted in a deep voice. The wine cup was slammed heavily on the table, and everyone present immediately fell silent. Meng Shun glanced at him with displeasure and asked, "It is a joyous occasion, we're just joking around. What are you losing your temper for? Did Princess Jianing give you grief again?" My hand trembled, and the tea in my cup spilled completely. Princess Jianing, who was sent to marry into a foreign land, has returned. Pei Wangja cast over a warning glance. His voice low. Jianing's return to the country is still confidential for now. Don't let outsiders know. Everyone present except me showed no shock. Clearly having known about it long ago, so. Am I an outsider? Meng Shun smiled. You get nervous the moment Jianing is mentioned. Under the flickering gauze lanterns, Pei Wangja lowered his eyes and didn't refute. Perhaps the candlelight was too glaring. My eyes hurt so much they nearly teared up. I hurriedly found an excuse to step outside for some fresh air, leaning on the railing and gazing afar. Countless lights stretched before me while noise and chatter filled the air behind. Once upon a time, Pei Wangja had secretly embraced me from behind right here. He pointed toward the Duke's mansion in the southwest and whispered softly. Sooner or later, you will be the young madam of my Pei family. Yet now he disdainfully said he had no intention of proposing marriage. Thinking of this, my tears suddenly fell, and no matter how I wiped with my handkerchief, they wouldn't dry. Familiar footsteps sounded behind me. Xiaoxi. Pei Wangja called out to me. The night is deep and the dew is heavy. You should head back. To see him. I had specially changed into the pink gauze dress he once praised as pretty. The evening breeze passed through the thin gauze, blowing across every inch of my skin, chilling me until I shivered. Yet Pei Wangja stood far away, not taking off his cloak to drape over my shoulders like before. I didn't turn around, only asked, "Don't you have anything to explain to me?" After a long pause, he finally spoke in a deliberately casual tone. It was just joking around between men. Why take it so seriously? I turned around, facing his somewhat annoyed expression, and spoke bitterly, a joke. If what you all were talking about just now was Princess Jianing, would you still think it was just a joke? Hearing this name, his face suddenly darkened, and he instinctively said coldly, "Jianing is precious beyond measure, who dare speak carelessly of her? Don't drag her into this for no reason." As expected, Jianing was his reverse scale. Even just mentioning her name, Pei Wangja could immediately shed his usual gentle warmth, his gaze turning cold as if looking at someone utterly insignificant. Tears dripped down with a patter, and I asked with a trembling voice, "If your heart already belongs to someone, why did you come to toy with me?" He didn't wipe my tears, only looked at me with eyes of near pity and said, "I thought you knew. I never let go of Jianing." So it turned out my tears couldn't even make a ripple in his heart. The pain scraped at me like death by 1,000 cuts, slice by slice my throat so bitter, I couldn't utter another word. At this moment, an attendant hurried over and whispered something in Pei Wangji's ear. Princess Jianing said. I saw the corners of his lips curl up slightly. The gloom on his face swept away completely. Without explanation, without even sparing me a glance, he flicked his sleeves and left. The wind howled in my ears as if screaming, "See, Pei Wangja never liked you. One-sided infatuation. reaping your own bitter fruit. When I composed myself and returned to the chamber, everyone was discussing Zhao Ning. Back then, when the political situation was turbulent, just as the Wuhuan tribe invaded, Zhao Ning had no choice but to exchange a marriage alliance for peace. When Wang Jie heard this news back then, he nearly lost half his life. Let's not bring up those national humiliations. Sigh. Now that the new emperor has ascended the throne, our nation's strength grows day by day. Yet the Wuhuan tribe still dares to cause trouble at the borders. His Majesty personally appointed Duke Pei to lead the campaign to quell the rebellion, and had Wang Jie personally bring Jianing back. This time he has finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, he won't have to drag us drinking until midnight anymore. Getting dead drunk and saying he is gonna go to Wuhuan to snatch Jianing back. Ha ha ha. Last year on Jianing's birthday, he even secretly went there, 10 days of traveling through wind and rain, just for a distant glimpse of Jianing. I thought Wang Jie had already let go long ago, and that he could actually end up with that little sweetheart of his. Men, you know, pretending to be devoted is just too easy for them. I never imagined that someone as cautious as Pei Wangjie could say such things while drunk. I had no idea that the time he claimed to be secluding himself to study diligently was actually spent going to see Jianing. What was I doing back then? Pricking all 10 fingers until they bled profusely, just to make knee pads for him. They kept on talking. About how his study walls were covered with portraits of Jianing. About the letters he sent by fast horse to Wuhuan every month. I covered my eyes, tears soaking through the handkerchief, my palms completely wet. The young master of the Shang family who loved wine and women most, sighed with emotion. That girl is quite pitiful too. If she'd followed me, she could at least have gotten a position as a chamber concubine. Now she can only watch helplessly as Wang Jie marries the princess and becomes a prince consort, while she finds a white silk sash to hang herself with. Everyone roared with laughter. I lowered my head in shame, tears dripping onto my silk skirt. Meng Shun straightened his expression and looked at me. Young ladies are the easiest to be deceived. Not only does it bring shame to the family, but heartbreak and regret are inevitable. Meng Shi, open your eyes wide and don't easily trust men. Pei Wangjie pretended so well, not only did I believe him, even Meng Shun, who spent day and night with him, almost believed him too. Deep affection is an illusion hard to discern. Only my pain at this moment doesn't lie. I nodded and said in a barely audible voice. I won't trust again. After several rounds of drinks, a servant said. Pei Wangjie had already left. It was originally a victory banquet with him as the guest of honor, yet he left without even saying goodbye. I heard he even took the Jiangnian chef from the restaurant with him. Everyone had knowing looks on their faces. Zhao Ning used to love sex-style cuisine the most. He is probably worried it would get cold by the time it is delivered, so he wants the chef to cook it fresh there. Wang Jie is really thoughtful. The dancing girls were dismissed. Everyone's interest waned, so the gathering ended hastily. Meng Shun drank quite a lot tonight, walking unsteadily, and in the end had to be helped onto the carriage by his attendants. Still muttering on and on. Don't listen to those people's nonsense just now. It is fine even if you don't get married. Your brother can provide for you at the Meng Manor for your whole life. Now I am 19. 2 years ago, young lords from noble families nearly wore out our doorstep with marriage proposals, but I rejected them all one by one. The gossip outside, the persuasions from my parents at home. I turned a deaf ear to all of it, single-mindedly waiting for Pei Wangjie to marry me in a grand ceremony. I devoted my heart to the bright moon, but alas, the bright moon only shines upon the ditch. It took so much courage to defy convention just this once, only for it all to vanish like bubbles into nothing. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but smile bitterly, gazing at the bright moon on the horizon, lost in my own sorrow. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Meng Shun sighed, his breath heavy with alcohol. Little clammed-up gourd not talking again. Sigh, everything about you is fine. It is just your personality is a bit too quiet, worlds apart from Zhao Ning. Hearing this name, my fingers twisting the handkerchief suddenly tightened. Zhao Ning was the late emperor's most beloved little princess, and now she is the esteemed grand princess. Naturally, I can't compare to her. You silly child, your brother isn't comparing you to her. I am just worried you'll suffer in silence later. Now that father holds the highest position as Grand Secretary, and your brother has also passed the imperial examination as Jinshi, you'll be the most influential noble lady in the capital from now on. I'd rather you be willful and headstrong, that is better than keeping everything bottled up inside. Every word of his was sincere, making my nose sting with emotion, and I suddenly felt an urge to tell him everything. I turned my face and was just about to speak, but Meng Shun had already tilted his head against the window and fallen asleep. Forget it. There is nothing much to say anyway. After all, I've always been this dull and quiet since childhood. Swallowing broken teeth with blood is nothing new. My memories drifted uncontrollably back to childhood. Meng Shun and I weren't particularly close during childhood. He was 4 years older than me, and from as far back as I could remember, he had already entered the palace as a study companion to the crown prince. And when I was 8, I was also chosen by Zhao Ning as a playmate. Before entering the palace, my parents repeatedly warned me to watch my words and actions, and never offend the little princess. I treated Zhao Ning as my master with my heart in my throat, and daily conversations were reduced to just, yes. Be careful, princess, this humble subject is frightened. I understood the principle of being cautious and careful when I was 8. Zhao Ning lost interest in me and clung to the other study companions in the palace. She had no airs of a princess, and her personality was too likable, easily winning everyone's favor. Meng Shun did, and so did Pei Wangjia. They took Zhao Ning to play pitch-pot, cricket fighting, catching butterflies. Their eyes full of adoration and admiration. And what was I doing during those times, meekly following behind, never invited to participate? Even though my eyes were full of envy, I didn't have the courage to step forward. Just like that, I was overlooked through one spring, summer, autumn, and winter after another. Pei Wangjia was the first person to truly see me. During the Lantern Festival when I was 12. They held all kinds of lanterns, scrambling to present them before Zhao Ning. Princess. Quick, look at my lion lantern. You'll definitely love it. Just take my carp lantern. I ran all over the capital to find this specifically for the princess. Even my brother Meng Shun only prepared one lantern for Zhao Ning. The candle flame flickered, casting a red haze over my eyes. I had long grown used to all this, just staring blankly from afar. But a round, chubby rabbit lantern suddenly appeared before my eyes. Pei Wangjia held up the lantern and asked me with a smile, "Do you like rabbits? I'll give it to you." Like the high-hanging moon sparing a bit of starlight, he illuminated those insecure, twisted years of my youth. From gratitude to admiration, then to falling in love. Love is like a gently flowing stream, eventually converging into a vast ocean. But I never dared to hope for anything. Whenever I blushed and stole glances at Pei Wangjia, his gaze would always rest gently on Zhao Ning. It was the same as mine, a fervent, restrained love, until Zhao Ning left for the marriage alliance. I heard Pei Wangjia was down for quite a while, drowning himself in drink every day. Meng Shun couldn't stand watching anymore and dragged him back to the Meng residence, half pulling, half carrying. A real man should have lofty ambitions. Ruining your career for love. Is it worth it? These words couldn't get through to Pei Wangjia. He said nothing, just kept his head down drinking. I rushed into the room, twisting my sleeve cuffs as I said, "Brother Pei, Zhao Ning's marriage alliance is already set in stone. If she helps revitalize the nation in the future, she'll be revered by all in Wuhuan too." His grayish-white eyes finally lit up, his gaze lingering on my face for a long while. From then on, he never mentioned Zhao Ning again, and even moved to the Meng family's academy to focus on his studies. Watching his eloquent essays, listening to him hold his own in debates. I sat behind him thinking, a man like him would surely leave a legacy for generations. We gradually grew closer. I would ask him for help with my studies, and he would gift me pearl hairpins and inkstones. This was enough. I wasn't greedy. Until 2 years ago, when he picked up my handkerchief and suddenly asked me as he returned it, "Xiaoxi, would you like to go boating on the lake?" His ears flushed red, his expression nervous, as he added, "Just the two of us." Back then, I was incredibly grateful, so the gods did favor me, after all. But now I finally understand favor me. No, the gods couldn't see me hiding in my corner either. That night I caught a chill and was bedridden for over half a month. Actually, I'd recovered long ago. I was just pretending to be ill because I didn't want to see anyone. Yet Meng Shun kept coming to my room every day to check on me. Worried I'd be bored, he'd come up with ways to tell me about things happening outside. You should have seen it yesterday. Wangzhe was parading through the streets on a tall horse, looking so impressive. I heard his policy essay was even praised by that person in the palace. He'll definitely be given an important position in the future. No matter how he rambled on, it was always about Pei Wangzhe. Listening made my heart ache, so I made an excuse that the medicine was too bitter and sent him off to buy me some candied fruits. But he came back before long. I was a step too late. Wangzhe has already bought all the preserved fruits from the shops in the south of the city and sent them to the palace, just to please Jianing. Last time he even said he treats you like his own little sister. But when I told him you were seriously ill and asked him for some, he wouldn't give any. TSK. Now, compared to the bitter medicine, the bitterness in my heart was even greater. Yet I could only force a smile and ask, what did he buy so many for? It is not just for Jianing alone to eat. Today the palace is holding a mid-autumn banquet, and they'll take the opportunity to announce the princess's return to the nation to the court officials. He even asked me if you weren't attending like previous years, said you should just rest well, lest you bring your illness into the palace and pass it to His Majesty. To others it sounded like Pei Wangzhe was being thoughtful, doing this for my own good. But he was afraid. Afraid I would act strangely in front of everyone. Afraid Jianing would discover this secret affair. Perhaps he wished I would stay trapped in my chambers, never getting close to Jianing. Suddenly, I didn't want to pretend to be sick anymore. Brother, I am almost fully recovered. Take me into the palace tonight. It had been a long time since I'd entered the palace. After my coming-of-age ceremony, every time I attended a grand banquet, I would be pulled aside by various madams for matchmaking, their words always hinting at their eligible nephews and grandsons. I grew tired of dealing with them and simply made excuses to avoid them all. This moon-viewing banquet was grander than any before, with drums and gongs resounding, lanterns and lights glittering brilliantly. After taking my seat with my brother, my eyes uncontrollably began searching for Pei Wangzhe's figure. But my eyes met with Jianing's ahead. After 3 years apart, her appearance was the same as before, yet even more radiant and captivating. I quickly lowered my head, but she still noticed me. She sent away the noble ladies surrounding her, lifted her skirt and ran towards me. "Xiaoxi, you are here." I stood up and bowed respectfully, but she pulled me up at once. "Our friendship doesn't need these formalities." Meng Shun raised an eyebrow. "Did the princess not see me? Why did you pass right by me and run straight to Xiaoxi? Since I came back, I've already seen you 3 times. This is the first time I am seeing Xiaoxi." She tilted her head and bantered with Meng Shun, her laughter crisp and clear. Even the swaying of her hair ornament seemed playful and adorable. This made Meng Shun clench his fist to hold back laughter, his eyes unable to hide his doting affection. The hall was brightly lit, yet I felt everything around me had dimmed. At this moment, I seemed to have returned to my childhood. Jianing's innate liveliness and flamboyance, her undeniable presence, these were what I lacked most and longed for most. I gazed at her in a daze, my feelings indescribably complicated. Seeing her again after everything that happened with Pei Wangzhe, I couldn't say I was sad, but I wasn't particularly happy either. In a daze, Pei Wangzhe arrived. He spotted Jianing precisely in the crowd at a glance, joy overflowing in his eyes. But when he caught sight of me from the corner of his eye, his steps faltered. As expected of the capital's foremost young master, he quickly composed himself and came over with a smile. I am a bit late. This is the most beautiful lantern in the capital. I wonder if you'll like it. He took out a carp lantern hidden behind his back and presented it before Jianing like he was offering a treasure. Pei Wangzhe really has a good memory, still remembering all of Jianing's childhood preferences. But how could he have forgotten my wish? At the start of the year during the blessing ceremony, I closed my eyes and made a sincere wish to the gods. May he pass the examination and come marry me soon. Even without scholarly honors, he should still come marry me. The moment I opened my eyes, Pei Wangzhe beside me was still earnestly making his wish. He asked about my wish, not wanting to burden him. I only said that after the imperial examination ended, we'd go boating at night, enjoying the stars and moon together, and he must give me a rabbit lantern then. I asked what he wished for from the gods, but he just smiled and said nothing. Silly girl, wishes won't come true if you say them out loud. Was it to love me without doubt, or to rekindle the old romance with Jianing? It doesn't matter anymore, seeing how his eyes are now filled with someone else. It certainly wasn't the former. Oh my. It is so chubby and cute. Jianing held it, looking it over from every angle, absolutely delighted. It is even prettier than the lotus lantern you had someone deliver to Wuhuan last year. Upon hearing this, Pei Wangzhe shot me a wary glance. That look stung, making my chest feel suffocated. I asked with a dry voice, does he often give you things? Yes, Wuhuan lacks resources. My lip rouge fabrics, hairpins, and the trendy picture books and embroidery patterns from the capital, all thanks to Brother Pei. No wonder. No wonder he always asked me what is popular among noble ladies nowadays. What styles they like. I never thought too much about it, assuming he wanted to give them to his sisters at home. But I gave him return gifts too, sent him special incense materials unique to Wuhuan. Look, he is still keeping them in his sachet. I followed Jianing's finger and looked at the sachet at Pei Wangzhe's waist. Brother Pei even said his sachet was worn out and asked me to make him a new one, but how would I know how to do that? So what he treasured so dearly wasn't the sachet I embroidered stitch by stitch, but the incense materials inside. Seeing me staring blankly at his waist, Pei Wangzhe touched his nose and awkwardly turned to the side, digging my nails hard into my palm. I forced myself to meet his guarded eyes and mocked. This embroidery doesn't look like the work of a seamstress. Could it be a gift from some young lady? Pei Wangzhe's face stiffened, and he coughed lightly twice before turning his head away. Fortunately, Jianing didn't intend to pry further. She looked toward the tall man in black robes in the distance and immediately lifted her skirt and ran off. Imperial uncle is here. I'll go over first. After she left, Pei Wangzhe sent Meng Shun away and brought me to the imperial garden. The palace servants are all on duty at the banquet now. The rear garden is exceptionally quiet, with only the rustling of leaves around me. His brows furrowed tightly, his mind entirely on the provocative words I had just said. You are usually so docile. What are you making a fuss about now? The cold wind made my eyes feel a bit swollen. I closed my eyes to hold back the stinging sensation, and asked softly in return. You don't dare let me enter the palace and appear before Zhao Ning. What are you afraid of? He froze, his gaze somewhat evasive. I have nothing to be afraid of. A man's reputation doesn't affect his career. I hid all of this for your honor. Do you understand? What a fine for my sake. Over the past half-month, I thought my mood had calmed down a lot. If he could be honest and talk things through with me, I had planned to part ways peacefully and amicably. For my own dignity, for the Meng family's reputation, there was no need to make an enemy of the newly appointed Zhuangyuan with a bright future ahead. For the lantern that once lit up my world when I was 10, for him who was like the bright moon hanging high in my childhood, I didn't want to make things too embarrassing either. But his words were too high-sounding, and the coldness in his eyes was so unfamiliar, as if I had never known him. It is not that I am unwilling to accept it, I just can't understand. Pei Wangzhe, why me? If he just wanted to find some amusement, a boring person like me wasn't the best choice. He lowered his gaze and stared at me for a while, finally sighing with a look of reluctance. Because you, who can't hide your feelings, reminded me so much of myself back then. Consider it. mutual consolation between two heartbroken souls. But for the past 2 years, I believe I've conducted myself quite properly. While others have numerous wives and concubines and frequent brothels, I have remained faithful and self-controlled for your sake, and have never acted inappropriately towards you. So it was pity for me, all along. The cold wind scattered my thoughts to pieces, and I finally heard the sound of my own heartstrings snapping. The moon hung high, but ultimately fell into the mud. What I thought was starlight turned out to be nothing but mud splattered on me. Who needs your pity, Pei Wangja? From now on we have nothing to do with each other. Having heard you have 2 hearts, I've come to sever ties. The words Pei Wangja was too ashamed to say. I said them for him. He seemed to exhale with relief, reaching out to brush the hair at my temple. But I tilted my head away. I only heard him say very softly, "We'll still see each other all the time. You are still my little sister." What a nice little sister. Who'd even want that? I was about to retort when music drifted from afar. The banquet must be about to begin. He sighed and swept his sleeves as he left. Come a few steps after me, so others won't get suspicious. After he left, I couldn't hold on anymore. All strength drained from my body as I crouched on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. As if merging with the dimness around me, I returned to that unremarkable corner of my childhood. After waking from the dream, it was merely a swan's fleeting reflection. I don't know how long I cried before a voice came from behind the tree. Your Highness, the young emperor has arrived. I looked toward the voice and saw only a man's mountain-like silhouette in black. My mind was in a daze, and I even forgot to cry. When had he been standing there, and how much had he heard? The only man in the entire palace who wore a black python robe was none other than the former crown prince, the current regent Si Guanyi. Night had fallen deep, and in the garden you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Perhaps he hadn't seen anything. I hastily wiped my tears, trying to clear my head a bit. When I wanted to go back, I ran into trouble. The winding paths were deep and secluded, and even by moonlight I could barely make out where to step. Fortunately, a palace maid came looking for me with a lantern just then. Miss Meng, the banquet has already started. Please hurry back and watch your step. She led me back to the main hall, where Meng Shun was looking anxious. Where did you go? You worried me to death, but I didn't dare just leave. Wasn't it you who sent a palace servant to find me? Meng Shun looked confused. Clearly it wasn't him. Seeing him staring at my red, swollen eyes and about to ask, I quickly deflected. Stop talking. His Majesty is watching. On the gilded throne, the young emperor, not yet 3 years old, was tilting his head and dozing off. Shi Guanyi sat behind him to the right, idly twirling a wine cup in his hand, looking quite casual and relaxed. I hadn't seen him in a very long time. A few years ago, he was still that graceful and noble crown prince. The late emperor was in poor health. His heirs had dwindled, and at one point he had only one princess, Zhao Ning. To ensure the stability of the dynasty, he appointed him, his younger blood brother, as the crown prince. My brother and Pei Wangja were both his study companions. According to them, Shi Guanyi was gifted like a bright pearl since childhood, though only a year older than them. While everyone else was still reciting the 3-character classic with bobbing heads, he had already mastered the teachings of sages and analyzed state policies like playing chess. It is just that. The current young emperor was made crown prince the moment he was born. With no hope of succession, he instead became the regent after the late emperor's death. All memorials must pass through his hands first, and his casual remarks carry the weight of imperial edicts. Opinions of him at court are divided. Some say he governs wisely, ushering in a golden age. Others say he holds all power in court and beyond, covering the sky with one hand. Compared to his former cold and aloof nobility, he now looks a bit more ruthless. As if noticing my gaze, he suddenly looked up, leaning his body slightly forward. His probing eyes made it seem like I was the wine cup being toyed with. Coldness instantly swept through my entire body. Instinct told me that Shi Guanyi had seen everything that happened in the Imperial Garden. I wished I could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. My face burned hotter than warmed wine. Suddenly, arrows shot out from somewhere unknown, and the scene descended into chaos. Protect His Majesty. Zi Guanyi's gaze turned sharp as he raised his sleeve to shield the crying young emperor with one hand. With one hand he flung the wine cup, knocking down the arrow that grazed past my ear. Meng Shun immediately shielded me behind him. I instinctively turned to look at Pei Wangjia, who wasn't far from me. He rushed toward Zhao Ning, who was surrounded by several guards, so frantic his hair came undone. In times of danger, a person's first choice never lies. My eyes stung unbearably. Yet I couldn't find my handkerchief anywhere, so I had to brush my sleeve across my eyes to cover them. Fortunately, the crisis was quickly resolved. The black-clad figure on the roof beam, seeing the assassination had failed, fled the scene in haste. Shi Guanyi immediately sent people to pursue them and had the young emperor relocated. The officials, still shaken, bid farewell and left with their families. The great hall fell silent at once. Only then did Pei Wangjia cast a guilty look my way, then quickly averted his gaze as if afraid someone might see. In my daze, Meng Shun had already pulled me to the center and bowed in thanks. Thank you for stepping in. Your Highness, this is my younger sister. I wonder if you still remember her. I hadn't even had time to avoid him yet. Here Meng Shun was delivering me right to his doorstep. What would Shi Guanyi say? That a noble lady had improper conduct, or that the Meng failed to raise their daughter properly? To my surprise, he said nothing, just narrowed his eyes with an overwhelming pressure. Meng Shun gave a dry laugh. It is only natural that your Highness doesn't remember. She has hardly spoken since childhood and hasn't entered the palace these past few years. Yeah, Shi Guanyi probably doesn't remember me at all. Since I was little, I only followed behind Zhao Ning, keeping my head lowered and bowing properly. Besides, it was already late at night just now. He probably didn't see my face clearly at all. I let out a long sigh of relief in my heart, but the next second, that breath surged right back up to my throat. I remember, you've grown up a bit more. Meng Shi. He lowered his body to look down at me, his ink-black jade, like eyes carrying an invisible yet overwhelming pressure. I am done for. I didn't dare raise my head. My hands gripping my sleeves were trembling. Fortunately, Zhao Ning spoke up at the right moment. Xiao Shi just got a scare. Royal uncle, please stop staring at her with such a frightening gaze. A teasing smile flashed across the corner of Shi Guanyi's lips. Is this king really that scary? Zhao Ning said awkwardly. You are either keeping a straight face all day or looking like you are about to eat someone. Even I am scared of you. How could Xiao Shi not be? Shi Guanyi nodded thoughtfully and said, Don't be scared. This king isn't a Rakshasa. I won't eat people. His gaze stared straight at me without any restraint, as if those words were meant for me. He looked even scarier now. The atmosphere froze for a moment, but fortunately everyone present was experienced, and they laughed along saying the prince was just joking. I was constantly worried about how Shi Guanyi would expose me, shrinking my neck and not daring to speak. Meng Shun anxiously tugged at my hem, but Shi Guanyi wasn't annoyed at all. Instead, he smiled even more wantonly. Still the same as when you were little, timid as a quail. As soon as the words fell, Pei Wangjia couldn't laugh anymore either. He hesitated for a moment, his voice slightly losing composure. Little C hasn't entered the palace for so long. Could it be she had some connection with the prince before? Zi Guanyi glanced at him, his expression instantly turning cold. Now even Zhao Ning didn't dare to speak. The banquet ended hastily. Pei Wangjia said he didn't take a carriage into the palace and wanted to leave together with us. When Meng Shun went to call the coachman, he hesitated for a moment, approached me wanting to say something. You and the prince. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by a palace maid carrying a lantern. Miss Meng, you dropped your handkerchief. I took the handkerchief and thanked the palace maid. Then she handed me the lantern in her hand. It is too dark out. My master asked me to pass this to you. A rabbit palace lantern, jade smooth throughout, looking exquisite and luxurious. Not like something palace servants would use. I looked at the palace maid's face and only then realized she was the one who came looking for me in the imperial garden. But aside from Zhao, I didn't know anyone else in the palace. Is it from Princess Zhao? The palace maid didn't answer, bowed and left. Pei Wangjia came over and examined the lantern carefully. It is definitely not from Zhao. This rabbit looks cheap, not something she'd like. I've been thinking about it for so many years, yet it seems he has forgotten the rabbit lantern from when we were 10. Forget it, there's nothing more to say. I glanced at him coldly and didn't respond. On the way back to the residence, Meng Shun brought up Zhao Ning to Pei Wangjia. They had always been on the best of terms, and Meng Shun dared to ask and say anything, with no intention of avoiding the topic around me. You've cleaned up that little sweetheart of yours, right? Zhao Ning isn't one to tolerate a single grain of sand in her eye. Pei Wangjia's face showed embarrassment as he secretly glanced at me, saying nothing more. When can we drink at your wedding as the prince consort? Soon, right? He rubbed his brow with slight irritation and only replied. It hasn't gotten to that point yet. We'll see later. Meng Shun was slightly tipsy from drinking, especially talkative tonight, saying things to Pei Wangjia about how regaining what was lost is one of life's greatest fortunes. The more he said, the worse Pei Wangjia's expression became, and the more frequently he looked at me with pitying eyes. I simply turned my head away, pretending not to see, fiddling with the handkerchief spread open on my lap. It was a somewhat worn aqua blue handkerchief that I had used for a full 3 years. Looking at the cannot speak, secretly longing, I had embroidered on it with my own hands. It only felt like a lifetime ago. Those characters were copied word by word from Pei Wangjia's policy essays. It was precisely after he picked up this handkerchief that he began showing affection toward me. At the time I was so overjoyed, I didn't think much. Just dove headfirst into what I thought was a dream come true. But now I suddenly understood, even though I had never been greedy and had hidden my feelings so well. Pei Wangjia still ended up pitying me. So it was because of these few words. He had long known my feelings and self-righteously assumed we were kindred spirits in suffering. How laughable. After Pei Wangjia got off the carriage, Meng Shun turned and asked me, "Did you have any connection with the prince before?" I shook my head. I can count on one hand the words I've exchanged with the prince. Where would any connection come from? Meng Shun nodded, his expression grave. The way he looked at you, forget it anyway. That one isn't someone we can afford to provoke, better to stay far away from him. Recalling Shi Guanyi's gaze in the great hall just now, as if he wanted to tear me apart and devour me, I nodded obediently. But with this reminder, I suddenly thought of a possibility. The handkerchief. Could it be that he picked it up? Was that palace maid sent by him to find me, and the rabbit lantern also from him? I lowered my head to look at my feet, and only then noticed a small mottled shadow inside the rabbit palace lantern. It was a slip of paper, the handwriting so forceful it seemed to pierce through, clearly written, such ugly handwriting. Was he referring to the words embroidered on the handkerchief? Pei Wangji's calligraphy was among the best in the entire capital. Countless noble families wore out their thresholds inviting him to write inscriptions. The only one who could call his writing ugly was probably Shi Guanyi, whose brushwork even my father praised as divine. Was Shi Guanyi making fun of me, treating me like an ant in his palm, toying with me while mocking me, and then crush them to death effortlessly in an instant? Brother is right, I'd better stay far away. The autumn air was crisp and clear when Zhao Ning invited me to go hunting. The invitation was sent several times, but I refused them all. First, Pei Wangjia would definitely be there to curry favor at such occasions, and I didn't want to see him. Second, I am truly afraid of Shi Guanyi. In front of him, I am like prey cornered in a hunting ground. He savors my panic yet is in no hurry to strike. This feeling is worse than just giving me a quick death with one stab. But I forgot Zhao Ning's personality. She won't rest until she gets what she wants. In the end, She came directly to the Hmong residence and shoved me into the carriage without a word. I clutched the carriage door, making one last struggle. Is your imperial uncle going? Zhao Ning waved her hand. He is either reviewing memorials or scolding officials every day. He is so busy even I can hardly see him. When we arrived at the hunting grounds, I looked around. Shi Guanyi was indeed not there. But Pei Wangji was. He glanced at me with a hint of reproach, then quickly looked away. While Zhao Ning and Meng Shun went to change into riding attire, he circled around behind me. Why did you bother coming? I took a step forward, putting distance between us, and said coldly, Rest assured, young Lord Pei. I am not here for you, nor will I ruin your plans. Pei Wangja furrowed his brow slightly and lowered his voice. You never attended these occasions before. If not for me, could it actually be for someone else? I looked toward the young lords clustered together not far away, my voice laced with anger. With so many marriageable young men from noble families present, can't I choose a husband for myself? You. Pei Wangja was furious, but upon realizing his reaction was too extreme, he immediately lowered his voice. Xiao Shi, stop being willful. There is no one in this group you could possibly fancy. I turned my head and met Pei Wangji's angry expression. Does the young Lord Pei really think himself my brother? The Hmong family's choice of husband isn't yours to meddle in. He used to always tell me which young lord was a good-for-nothing, which household was a den of wolves. I believed him without doubt and felt incredibly fortunate to have found such a good man. Looking at it now. What a joke. I casually pointed at the figure in sky-blue robes standing with hands clasped behind his back in the distance. I fancy that one. Is that not allowed? This time Pei Wangja's eyes turned red with anger as he said through gritted teeth. Take a good look at who that is. Is he someone you can afford to provoke? The man on the grassy slope happened to turn around just then. The sun was blinding, and I couldn't make out his expression. But it wasn't hard to tell. It was Shi Guanyi. Doesn't he only wear black? Wasn't he not supposed to come? My hand pointing at him was still hanging in midair. I hurriedly lowered it and slipped away faster than a rabbit. Not only couldn't I afford to provoke him, I couldn't even hide from him. Zhao Ning had finished changing into her riding attire and was bickering with Meng Shun over who was better at mounted archery. Shall we have a match? No thanks, I wouldn't dare bully a woman. Zhao Ning's cheeks puffed up in anger. Then let's team up by gender. Me with Brother Pei, and you with Xiao Qi. I waved my hands in a fluster. I am only half decent at horseback riding, and I know absolutely nothing about archery. Pei Wangja was about to speak up and make an excuse for me. But upon seeing the anticipation filling Zhao Ning's eyes, he turned his head away in silent consent. They were in high spirits and couldn't hear a word I said, noisily pushing me to change clothes and get on a horse. When I came out, the two who had just been chattering non-stop had their necks shrunk like quails. Shi Guanyi was standing to the side holding a bow, his azure narrow-sleeved riding attire adding a touch of youthful vigor quite different from his usual decisive and ruthless regent self. Xiao Oxi, hurry, and pay your respects to the prince. Seeing me in a daze, Meng Shun spoke up to remind me. I curtsied and greeted him softly. Shi Guanyi let out an almost inaudible chuckle. Do you know how to ride and shoot? I shook my head, not really, but brother can teach me. He pressed his thin lips together and said nothing more. After brother helped me onto the horse, he suddenly spoke up. There have been floods in the south recently. This prince would like to see the compiled records of flood control over the years. Can compiler Meng submit them by tomorrow? As soon as his words fell, Meng Shun's hand holding the reins trembled slightly. He had just recently entered the Hanlin Academy. Although he was only a compiler of the junior 6th rank, one couldn't enter the Grand Secretariat without being a Hanlin scholar first. It was a genuinely promising position with a bright future. Then this subject will go prepare now. After Meng Shun finished his bow, he dashed off in a flash without even having time to change his clothes. Zhao Ning watched his retreating figure and said with regret, Looks like we won't be able to compete then. Xiao Shi, get off the horse. But Shi Guanyi grabbed my reins and said in a tone that brooked no argument, "Why can't we compete? I'll give you a head start of 1 incense stick's time. The prize will be your jade chess set, Imperial Uncle. It is settled then." Zhao Ning was overjoyed, vaulted onto her horse, and galloped toward the woods. But Pei Wangjia still hadn't moved. His lips pressed into a thin line, his gaze gradually darkening as it shifted back and forth between me and Shi Guanyi. Only when Zhao Ning turned back to call him did he snap out of it, picking up his bow and leaving. Now it was just me and Shi Guanyi left. I gripped the horse's harness tightly, thinking for a long while but not knowing what to say. Fortunately, Shi Guanyi didn't speak either, just leading the horse at an unhurried pace into the woods. I sat on the horse, my gaze drawn to his tall and proud figure. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a faint halo around him. This was the first time I looked down at him, Shi Guanyi, who stood at the center of power. Perhaps no one had ever dared to look down at him. Thinking of this, I hurriedly struggled to dismount. But he turned back and steadied me with one hand, his voice calm. "What is wrong? How about you ride the horse, Your Highness? I'll hold the reins for you." Ziguanyi raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a half-smile, "I know how to ride, and I am not in the habit of being led around by a woman." He seemed to have misunderstood, looking at this handsome face that truly made me nervous. I stammered for a long time but couldn't come up with a proper explanation. Forget it. I just threw caution to the wind and mustered up courage as if facing death. "Your Highness, is there anything you want to ask me?" Ziguanyi lowered his gaze as if thinking, and only replied after a long while, "Yes." I guessed he must want to ask what exactly was going on between me and Pei Wangjia that night. He saw us in the Imperial Garden. I'd been tossing and turning over this for a while, and finally came to one possibility. He was vetting me for Zhao Ning. That is why he wasn't in a hurry to expose me, but found an excuse to question me alone. Just as my mind was full of thoughts about how to muddle through without implicating my family, he asked leisurely, "Is there anything you want to hunt?" "Number," I shook my head blankly, only to hear him continue, "Get off the horse." Having heard that Shi Guanyi was unpredictable in temperament, I hurried to grab the saddle and dismount. In my haste, my foot slipped into thin air, and just as I was about to fall, Shi Guanyi caught me by the waist. I fumbled to grab onto his shoulders, and in the moment our eyes met, he had already set me steadily on the ground. The light cedar scent on him drifted around, and I couldn't help but sniff. Before I could come to my senses, he had already mounted his horse, his eyes carrying a smile. "Wait here for me. I'll hunt the best for you." The horse's hooves kicked up dust. Watching his hair tied high and flowing in the wind, I felt somewhat unfamiliar. Not the proud and aloof crown prince, nor the sinister and ruthless regent. Silver saddle gleaming on a white horse, galloping swift as a shooting star. Strangely, this look suited him more. Standing in place for a long while, I only belatedly realized Shi Guanyi had no intention of questioning me now, as if he was still toying with me like prey. But why did he refer to himself as I instead of this king? When Zhao and Pei Wangjia returned, the servants behind them carried handfuls of wild pheasants and rabbits. Pei Wangjia had also hunted a pair of wild geese, presenting them attentively before Zhao. "May we be like a pair of flying swans, never parting till our hair turns white." The symbolism was excellent. I suddenly remembered when he hunted that fox pelt. He had presented it to me the same way, like offering a treasure. There is a fox so leisurely, by the weir of the Qi River. Foxes always appear alone, solitary and forlorn. So it turns out everything had long been destined. Zhao looked at the wild geese, joy spreading across her brows. "I've definitely won, definitely won." The chess set Imperial Uncle personally polished from fine materials. Now he'll have to reluctantly part with it. Pei Wangjia smiled indulgently, his gaze briefly passing over me before he quickly turned slightly away, as if he couldn't bear to let me see his expression. Only the sound of galloping hooves came from the forest. Shi Guanyi swept his robe aside and dismounted, the horse's back piled with many prey. The most eye-catching among them was a sable with fur as soft as silk. Jianing immediately deflated, waving her hand and saying it was no fun. Imperial uncle is so skilled in the 6 arts, even giving me a stick of incense's head start wouldn't be enough. Si Guanyi resumed his usual stern demeanor in front of others and said to her, "Your horsemanship and archery have improved somewhat compared to 3 years ago. Not bad." A flash of loneliness crossed Jianing's face. But she quickly composed herself, stroking the sable fur adoringly, as she said, "It is rare to see a pelt of such color. It would make a perfect cloak to match the padded jacket I recently had made. Can I take it?" Si Guanyi tapped her hand with the tip of his bow and said indifferently, "Let Meng Shi pick first." The smile on Pei Wangji's face froze, his eyes dimming slightly when he looked at me. Seeing Jianing looking at me eagerly, I didn't want to take what she desired, so I gently declined. Better leave it for the princess. I already have a fox fur coat at home to keep warm, though its quality can't compare to the sable the prince hunted. Upon hearing this, an inexplicable emotion churned in the depths of Pei Wangji's eyes. Shi Guanyi raised his eyes to glance at him sideways, letting out a light scoff with a hint of amusement. "It is probably nothing good anyway, since it can't compare, just replace it." Upon hearing this, Pei Wangji felt embarrassed and immediately lowered his head. Shi Guanyi's tone brooked no refusal. Zhao Ning awkwardly withdrew her hand and stared at the lamb stacked below. "Let's have roasted lamb together tonight." As daylight dimmed, Shi Guanyi sent people to set up a fire and stove, and soon the aroma spread everywhere. Zhao Ning and I sat around the bonfire. She kept thinking about Shi Guanyi's chess set, while Pei Wangji attentively served her food. Shi Guanyi was truly busy. Even in a moment of leisure, people kept coming to report matters. I gazed at his sharp silhouette from afar, feeling that the scene in the forest just now seemed somewhat unreal. Perhaps I had been staring too long. Pei Wangji gave a light cough, his expression slightly unusual. I snapped back to my senses, only to hear Zhao Ning say, "My imperial uncle is quite handsome, isn't he?" Huh? I didn't expect her to suddenly ask me this, and answered honestly, "The prince is indeed of exceptional appearance." The chopsticks in Pei Wangji's hand trembled, and his expression gradually darkened. But Zhao Ning shook her head and sighed, "Then you mustn't fall for him just because he is good-looking." My mother the Empress used to constantly think about marrying my cousin from my maternal grandfather's family to him. He said something about how the realm is still unsettled, and he has no interest in romantic affairs. After all these years, he can't even remember my cousin's full name. After saying that, she mysteriously leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Now he is 24, and there is not even a female mosquito flying around in his chambers." The Empress Dowager secretly sent quite a few people in, but he drove them all out with a dark face. Afraid she'd get bored and send more people. He even used my name to keep the Empress Dowager busy with tasks. Wanting to see Sutra's hand copied by her, wanting to eat the dried apricots she made when he was little, nearly exhausted my mother to death. And look, the moment I came back and checked the accounts, it all fell apart. It seems Si Guanyi is always fond of playing tricks on people, even daring to fool the Empress Dowager completely. Just thinking that the all-powerful regent prince would also be nagged about marriage by his sister-in-law and teased by his niece. I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. Now Pei Wangji's face turned completely black like the bottom of a pot, and he slapped down his chopsticks with a clatter. I was startled. What was he doing? Wasn't he afraid Jianing would notice something was off? "What are you laughing at?" Si Guanyi, who had returned at some unknown time, spoke eerily from behind. Jianing's eyes darted around, and she hurriedly said, "I invited Xiaoxi into the palace to play chess with me. Do you have to interfere even when us girls are just chatting, imperial uncle?" Si Guanyi raised an eyebrow and asked me, "You can play chess too?" After I softly agreed, he said nothing more, and with a sweep of his robe, naturally sat down beside me. The cold cedarwood scent on him drifted with the evening breeze, forcefully invading my nose without room for objection. Now I couldn't eat even a single piece of mutton. Jianing didn't eat much either, and started chatting with me about amusing stories from childhood. On your first day entering the palace, the two of us climbed trees to pick fruits in the imperial garden and both fell flat on our backs. Do you still remember? I remember. Back then, 8-year-old me hadn't yet taken my parents' admonitions to heart and truly treated the princess as a playmate. We climbed the tree together, then fell down together. The palace servants were scared out of their wits, crowding around her one after another. Please don't cry, princess. Where does it hurt? It is all this senseless tree's fault. Shall this servant beat it for you? After they finished coaxing Zhao Ning in soft, gentle voices, they turned and looked down at me with slight reproach, me, who had fallen from even higher up. That moment of embarrassment. I think I'll never forget it in this lifetime. But I never blamed the palace servants in my heart. It was me, this senseless companion, who stirred up the little princess's playful urge to insist on climbing the tree, and they didn't dare disobey. If Zhao Ning had been the slightest bit careless, their heads wouldn't have stayed on their shoulders. At that time, I gradually came to understand that before a noble lady of the imperial family, I wasn't much different from them. Know my place clearly, be cautious and careful to avoid making mistakes that would implicate my family. The memories gradually faded, and I softly answered Zhao Ning. I remember. And also, I ran to Imperial Uncle's class to cause trouble. Your brother and Brother Pei both played along trying to catch me. Imperial Uncle remained calm and composed, while you were so anxious on the side that your throat was smoking from all the shouting. When the Crown Prince was studying, Meng Xun, as a study companion, actually dared to fool around. The crime of delaying the Crown Prince's studies was much more serious. In that instant, I even imagined the scene of our family of 4 being exiled to Chengzhou in shackles. Pei Wangjia, who was mentioned, also chimed in with a smile. Back then, Your Highness was already far beyond our reach. At 14, you could debate with the Grand Tutor and leave him red-faced with embarrassment. Meng Xun and I couldn't understand a thing and spent most of the time dozing off. Zi Guanyi ignored him and just pushed the dishes that were farther away toward me. Seeing this, Pei Wangjia's eyes flickered slightly, and he restrained his smile. Jianing suddenly asked, "But after your hairpin ceremony, how did you suddenly fall ill? You never entered the palace again after that." The composure I had maintained on my face instantly crumbled. The pitter-patter of rain, the sound of fabric tearing. This was the past I was most unwilling to mention. Pei Wangjia also looked at me, as if waiting for my answer. He had never asked, and I had never brought it up either. I parted my lips, my chin trembling involuntarily, unable to say a word no matter what. My mind went blank, I couldn't even think of an excuse to deflect. Zi Guanyi, who hadn't spoken the whole time, suddenly spoke up. Huh. Jianing was somewhat puzzled, only to see Shi Guanyi furrowing his brow and giving her a sidelong glance. Even eating can't shut your mouth, can it? Only then did Zhao Ning fall silent, pouting her lips somewhat resentfully. My nails dug hard into my palms, barely managing to suppress my trembling. Out of the corner of my eye, it seemed like 2 gazes had been sizing me up the whole time. I got home very late that day. My parents were waiting for me at the door, and only relaxed when they saw me get off Zhao Ning's carriage, reminding me, "Don't come home this late again." Mother was worried sick. My nose tingled with emotion, and I tightly held her hand. "Mother, I am fine. You don't need to worry." I really was fine except in my dreams. It felt like someone was gripping my throat hard. When I woke, my throat was dry and parched, and my pillow was soaked with tears. But life went on as usual. Thanks Toxi Guanyi, I no longer had the energy to think about Pei Wangjia. My head was full of his strange behavior. Yet Pei Wangjia sent several letters. In the letters he mentioned that my expression was unusual that night, asking if something had happened the year of my coming-of-age ceremony. He also said that when he asked Meng Xun about it, he kept his lips sealed. I threw the letters into the stove, and the rising flames engulfed them instantly. This finally made me feel a bit better. A few days later, the sable fur was delivered to my residence after being processed, along with the jadestone chess set that Zhao Ning had been longing for. It was warm, smooth, and translucent throughout, with an excellent feel. I held it between my fingertips and played with it for a long time before tucking it away in a case. This gift was too generous. I'd have to find an opportunity to return the favor later. But looking at the sable fur, I felt somewhat troubled. But Shiguani was right. There is nothing to be reluctant about with items that aren't good enough. Just replace them. Fox fur is like that, and so are people. I was about to throw away the fox fur when Meng Shun happened to come looking for me. Seeing the dark circles under his eyes as if he hadn't slept for several nights, I asked with concern, "What is wrong, brother?" He waved his hand and said wearily, "Didn't the prince ask me to organize documents last time? I stayed up all night and pushed the cart with historical records into the palace before dawn the next day. And guess what he said? Oh, this prince already issued flood control measures last night. You've worked hard, compiler Meng, you may take it away. I've been unable to sleep for days thinking about it. Could it be that he thinks I am incompetent? It seems what he discussed with his subordinates that night during the hunt was this matter, and he deliberately sent Meng Shun away. My mind was in a mess, so I just casually said a few comforting words to Meng Shun. Seeing that I was preoccupied, he didn't say more. He looked at the fox fur I threw on the ground with such pity, and asked for it to use as a footmat. Unexpectedly, the next day, Pei Wangji used the excuse of looking for Meng Shun and blocked my way in the backyard of the Meng residence. He grabbed my sleeve and asked in disbelief, "You actually threw it away?" Even during our most passionate times, he always kept his distance from me at the Meng residence, respectful and distant, afraid others might notice something. Yet now he dares to openly pull and tug at me. I shook him off, my tone cold. "What? Does young Lord Pei want it back?" He stiffened at my retort, and after a long moment softened his voice. "That is not what I meant. It is just that you used to clearly cherish it so much." In his words, I could even detect a hint of inexplicable grievance. I cast a cold glance at his waist. The fragrance was the same, yet the sachet had been replaced with an exquisitely embroidered one. I cherished it before because I was blind in both eyes and heart. Then young Lord Pei can just consider me fickle. You, forget that for now. I've been secretly sending you letters recently. Why haven't you replied to any of them? I flicked my sleeve and walked away, but Pei Wangja called out to stop me. "Xiao Shi." His voice was low and hoarse. "Stay away from Shi Guani." One after another. Why does everyone tell me to stay away from him? Could Shi Guani really be a man-eating Rakshasa? I brushed off the corner of my sleeve that Pei Wangja had touched with disgust, and said irritably, "You are the one who should stay away from me, Jinx." From then on, I resolved to stay in my room without stepping out at all. I held out until the minor snow season. That day the first snow before the new year fell, drifting down in a magnificent display. Mother brought along Madame Pei, the Duchess, insisting on taking us younger ones to Changshu Temple. Saying something about sincerity bringing divine response. We had to climb the mountain to offer incense and worship Buddha, despite the rain and snow. They had been bosom friends since their boudoir days, and the two families were very close. This is also the reason I am unwilling to bring up matters between me and Pei Wangja openly. The mountain path was slippery, so I walked slower, following behind Meng Shun and Pei Wangja, listening to them talk about the recent changes at court. A few days ago at the morning court session, Shi Guani dismissed Lord Song from his position on charges of disrespect. Pei Wangja, being someone who follows rules and propriety strictly, was quite furious about this. Are our dynasty's laws just for show? It was merely careless etiquette, a salary deduction would do, or caning for that matter. But how can they directly strip someone of their official position? Meng Shun hurriedly lowered his voice. Well, Lord Song can't exactly claim injustice. Everyone at court knows he has been negligent in his duties. He can't escape responsibility for the flooding in the south. Has the Ministry of Revenue allocated little silver for construction these years? Yet the river embankments would collapse with just one kick, nothing but loose soil. Where do you think the money went? Even so, evidence must be presented. What is the censor it for? Is the Court of Judicial Review just feeding idle people? A joint trial by the three judicial offices would surely get to the bottom of things. Why pass judgment so carelessly? It chills officials' hearts emotionally, and violates the law legally. Seeing his close friend getting more and more worked up, Mengshun said in a low voice. Keep it down, it wouldn't be good if someone overheard. Lord Song is a veteran official who served 2 emperors, yet even he couldn't escape. I am just a newly appointed top scholar who only recently entered office. Who knows, I might be dismissed by him any day. Mengshun also felt somewhat moved. The heart of a ruler is hard to fathom. How did that crown prince who once left us all in the dust suddenly? Sigh, but given your childhood friendship, he wouldn't do such a thing to you. He, Shiguan. Wangjia. Watch your words. Only then did Pei Wangjia realize his slip of tongue, lowering his voice as he said. Since he became regent, has he done few things like this? Rewards and punishments all depend on his whims. The ministers are furious but dare not speak out. The rain grew heavier and heavier, swallowing their voices. I walked behind holding an umbrella. Goosebumps rising all over my body. I recalled Ishi Guanyi that day, smiling as he asked me what prey I wanted, blazing like the scorching sun. Is Si Guanyi really as autocratic and tyrannical as they say? Somehow, I found it hard to believe. We didn't reach the mountaintop until afternoon, and before arriving at Changshu Temple, we could already hear the lingering Buddhist chants and distant bell sounds. Palace servants and eunuchs were waiting outside the temple. Presumably some royal noble had come to offer prayers to Buddha. Sure enough, Jianing lifted her skirt to step over the threshold stone, excitedly greeting me, Xiaoxi. You came too. After everyone exchanged greetings, Mother and Madame Pei insisted on taking the 3 of us to pray for marriage matches. As expected, they had an ulterior motive for dragging us along. Mengshun's face darkened. Pei Wangji's gaze wavered uncertainly between me and Jianing. Who knows what he was thinking? I seized the opportunity to say the princess wanted to catch up with me. Mother couldn't really object, so she waved her hand and let me go. After Mengshun and Pei Wangji obediently followed the others into the hall, Zhao Ning and I sat beneath the ancient tree to admire the snow. This tree growing before the Buddha seemed to possess a spirit of its own even in winter. Its branches were lush and full, able to shield against the wind and snow. But it was still so cold. I wrapped my fur robe tighter against the chill inside. The snow is really heavy. Zhao Ning handed me her hand warmer. I was about to decline when I heard her say, I am not cold. The snow in Wuhan falls much heavier than here. I could even ride horses through blizzards there. Since her return to the capital, this was the first time I heard her mention Wuhan, that tribe where she had lived for 3 years, now conquered and raised by the Pei family's northern campaign. Seeing her expression unchanged, I gathered my courage and asked, was the princess happy there? Her smile froze instantly. After a long pause, I finally heard her voice, devoid of any emotion. I was happy. For a time. The white mist from her breath blurred around her eyes, leaving them misty and damp. I suddenly felt that Zhao Ning wasn't like before anymore. But how could I dare pry into the princess's sorrows? I hurriedly changed the subject. What did the princess come to pray for today? She closed her eyes and lowered her head, reciting devoutly. To deliver the departed may they in their next life attain enlightenment. With bodies like crystal, luminous within and without, pure and free from all defilement. I couldn't quite understand, only gazing at her eyelashes glistening with clear tears. But soon she recovered as usual, lifting her head and saying to me with a smile, I was just kidding. It is only because Imperial Uncle said I've been obsessed with reading those storybooks about the Buddhist prodigy in the capital lately, and insisted on bringing me to see what monks look like, to clear my head a bit. I couldn't hold back my laughter, But a moment later I suddenly realized something. My smile came to an abrupt halt, and I shot to my feet. Whether from the cold or from shock, my words came out trembling. The prince is here too. There, she pointed behind me. Isn't he right over there? Ziguani, clad in a black cloak, stood under the eaves, no more than 3 jang from me. White snow covered the red tiles and green mountains. The world a vast expanse of white. Through the swirling snow, our eyes met. His eyes were unfathomably deep, as if shrouded in layers upon layers of mist. I bowed respectfully, but he raised his hand to dismiss the formality. Between heaven and earth, we just gazed at each other in silence for a long while. Only when the bell rang did I come to my senses, hurriedly looking toward Jianing beside me. Fortunately, she hadn't noticed, her head lowered in deep thought, her expression somewhat forlorn. I couldn't bear to disturb her and prepared to go rest in the guest hall. The snow had already accumulated a thin layer. With one hand holding the umbrella and the other struggling to lift the heavy sable fur coat, I was afraid it would drag on the ground and get wet. But a hand with distinct knuckles suddenly appeared before my eyes, taking the oil paper umbrella and holding it higher. You look really good in this. The familiar scent of pine and snow was especially clear in the cold air. I looked up, only to see Shi Guanyi's sharp and clean-cut jawline. My first reaction was to snatch the umbrella away. But he saw through my intention, his voice clear and deep. Let's go. Don't get your clothes wet. I didn't refuse anymore, freeing both hands to lift my sable coat, which was much more comfortable. The way to the guest hall wasn't far, but hindered by the snow, we walked slowly the whole way. He always kept just the right distance from me, tilting the umbrella slightly toward me to block the cold wind. What did you come to pray for? He suddenly asked me. I shook my head and said, I don't believe in gods or Buddha. I didn't pray for anything. Zi Guanyi tilted his head to look at me, and said something completely out of nowhere. You used to believe. How did he know? But indeed, I had believed once, and it half came true, in the end. Pei Wangjia did top the imperial examination as I had prayed. Yet from start to finish, he never thought of marrying me. I had placed my trust in the wrong person, even gods and Buddha couldn't help me with that. So now I'd rather believe that success lies in one's own hands. Your Highness must believe, right? I tilted my head and asked him. He said softly, I didn't believe before. But now I do. Si Guanyi's courtesy name was Huiesi, so I suppose his mother the Empress must have been a devout Buddhist too. I never expected he hadn't believed in gods or Buddha before. Seeing me gaze at him hesitantly, his eyes brightened slightly as he said with a half-smile, Do I not look like someone who can be trusted? Well, that is fair. Plenty of court officials curse me behind my back, saying my methods are cruel, and I don't deserve the name Huishi. My footsteps faltered, not knowing what to say. But the next second, his smile deepened. Though the ones who said that have already been dealt with by me, I thought he might actually feel dejected. I almost fell for his trick. Looks like I'll need to remind father and my brothers to watch their words in the future. When we reached the eaves, I ascended the steps, but Shi Guanyi didn't move further, stopping at the foot of the stairs. He was really tall. Even after climbing 3 steps, I could barely meet his eyes at level. Only then did I notice a thin layer of snow had settled on half his body, while I didn't even have wet shoulders. Thank you, Your Highness. He raised an eyebrow at me. Thank me for what? There was quite a lot to thank him for the generous gifts, for holding the umbrella for me, and for knowing everything yet not putting me in an awkward position. Although his behavior still seemed somewhat strange to me, I could now be certain he had no intention of exposing me. For not letting me get caught in the snow, thank you for sparing my dignity. I spoke vaguely, but Shi Guanyi's expression shifted slightly, immediately understanding what I meant. Fortunately, he said nothing. Simply handed me the umbrella, and spoke gently. Go inside. The brazier has already been prepared. He turned and walked into the wind and snow. In the time it took to exchange those few words, Shi Guanyi's robes had already gathered snow, making him look as if he were wearing a silvery white cloak. I stood under the eaves watching for a long time. He would probably look really good in this color too. No, what am I even looking at? I hurried back to the guest hall as if fleeing, my cheeks frighteningly hot. It must be because the fire in this room is burning too strong, I thought. I leaned against the couch to rest, and before long I drifted off to sleep. By the time Zhao Weining shook me awake, it was already dark outside. The snow has stopped, but the path down the mountain has iced over. I am afraid we won't be able to leave today, I groggily agreed. They say there is a dried-up ancient well behind the mountain that is sealed 1,000-year-old Rakshasa. Wanna go take a look? She was always the boldest with a childlike spirit when she spoke of it. Her eyes were shining with anticipation. I was also pretty curious. What does a Rakshasa look like? Like Shi Guanyi. After hastily eating some vegetarian food, Zhao couldn't wait to pull me up. Mengshun and the others were already waiting outside, looking unusually reserved. Glancing toward the corridor, Shi Guanyi was leaning there with his eyes closed. Hearing the sound, he first raised his eyes to glance at me, then sneered at Zhao. Shi Zhao, how old are you now? Still think you are some wet behind the ears kid. These words didn't dampen Zhao enthusiasm in the slightest. She turned a deaf ear and just kept clamoring to set off. Pei Wangjia took the lead with her. I followed closely by my brother's side. Shi Guanyi's words were so harsh, I thought he looked down on such childish tricks. But unexpectedly, he followed along unhurriedly at the very back. Could he also be interested in the Rakshasa? Chanshu Temple was enormous. Following the small path, the further we walked, the more desolate it became. The wind rustled and whistled, sometimes sounding like roaring, sometimes like sobbing, and the lantern was blown flickering on and off. I belatedly started to feel scared. Mengshun was even worse, so frightened that he clung desperately to Pei Wangjia's belt, not daring to let go even when Zhao mocked him. I wanted to hurry and catch up, but the lantern in my hand suddenly went out. I seemed to have tripped on gravel underfoot and stumbled, but fortunately the person behind me steadied my arm. Shi Guanyi gave me his lantern, and neither of us spoke. But his hand never let go, only changing to loosely tugging at my sleeve. It felt like the relief of suddenly grabbing driftwood while floating at sea. But shouldn't I be the one grabbing? I asked him quietly. Is your highness scared too? A man being afraid of ghosts isn't embarrassing, unexpectedly. Shi Guanyi looked at me as if seeing a ghost, and said with some amusement. What are you thinking? I was just worried you'd be scared. Oh, perhaps I didn't look convinced enough, and he let go at once. Startled, I immediately grabbed his sleeve in return, instinctively looking at him. His eyes dimmed and brightened with the flickering candlelight, his smile gradually deepening, unconcealed. I held on to him like this all the way, only letting go when Zhao Ning exclaimed that we'd arrived. After the two of them lit all the stone lanterns around, Mengshun finally dared to turn back and look at me, clearing his throat and saying, Bro didn't forget about you. Bro just trusted you were brave. A cold air emanated from the dried-up well. Even Zhao Ning felt a chill of fear. Pei Wangjia volunteered himself, but after poking his head in a few times, he shrank back each time. Zhao Ning turned around, smiling mischievously. Royal uncle, as an elder you shouldn't be afraid, right? Shi Guanyi, suddenly called upon, darkened his expression, a hint of displeasure coloring his brow. But he didn't lash out, walking straight to the ancient well and peering inside. Everyone held their breath in unison, and the surroundings suddenly went quiet. Zhao Ning asked in a low voice, How is it? Is there anything? Shi Guanyi didn't even lift his head, staring at the well opening with a composed expression. Yes. What? The corner of his lips curved into a smile tinged with mischief and malice, his voice dropping even lower. A face. In the chaos, no one knew who screamed first, or who ran first. Everyone scattered like startled birds in an instant. Mengshun was so scared he threw the lantern away, running as fast as his legs could carry him. My heart was pounding. I couldn't bother lifting my skirt anymore, just watching their retreating figures and running with all my might. But compared to the three of them, I really couldn't keep up physically, and soon fell further and further behind. Until Shi Guanyi passed me from the side and reached a hand back toward me. He tilted his head, smiling at me bewitchingly. The moment I reached out and touched him, he flipped his palm and clasped my hand tightly. Just like that, leading me, running hard toward the light at the far end ahead. After returning to the temple, everyone was still shaken and went back to their rooms to rest. The lingering warmth in my palm was still there, with a slight dampness. My heartbeat also hadn't calmed down for a long time, not sure if it was from being scared. I slapped my cheeks hard, and finally cleared my head a bit. By the time I finished washing up, Mother had already retired in the adjoining room. I didn't dare turn off the lamp, and just as I was about to sleep, shadows stirred outside the window. My heart, which had just settled, was lifted again all at once. Just as I was looking for something handy for self-defense, the window was gently knocked. Pei Wangji's voice came through. "Xiao Shi, are you asleep?" I was startled, immediately threw on a robe and got up, walked to the window and cursed in a low voice. "Are you crazy? My mother is right next door." His voice was as faint as a mosquito. "Open the window. I want to talk to you for a bit. What else is there to say between us?" After a while, he spoke again. This time his voice clearly tinged with some hoarseness. "I saw it, Shi Guanyi, holding your hand. Not to mention that was a cry for help in a desperate moment. Even if there were something between Shi Guanyi and me, what business is it of his? After running out, I didn't see you. My first thought was that you must be terrified, so I immediately wanted to turn back and find you. I lost my patience and cut him off. Enough. Zhao Ning is staying in the courtyard just ahead. If she finds out you are visiting another girl this late, you can kiss your position as prince consort goodbye." He wanted to say more, but footsteps of palace guards on night patrol echoed from afar. Through the window, I only heard him sigh softly before hurrying away. I stood quietly by the window like this, until the patrolling footsteps faded into the distance, pondering for a long time yet still unable to fathom Pei Wangji's intentions. Forget it, I should just rest first. Just as I turned around, the window was lightly tapped twice again. "Stop bothering me." A soft laugh came from outside the window. I suddenly snapped back to my senses and pushed open the window. The low, narrow window forced Shi Guanyi to lean down slightly, his handsome face very close to mine, the smile in his eyes rippling like a boat full of stars and moonlight. "So unwelcome, am I?" Cold wind blew into the room. I took a step back, wrapped my robe tighter, and said with an awkward smile, "I didn't know it was you, Your Highness. I thought it was a wild cat." He didn't speak, propping both hands on the windowsill, his mountain-like back blocking the cold wind, and the room instantly grew warmer. Just staring at me silently like that, as if I had rice stuck on my face. Being stared at made me a bit uncomfortable, so I found something to say. "You were lying, weren't you, Your Highness? Is there really a face at the bottom of the well?" Thinking about it afterward, Shi Guanyi's expression when he said that was no different from my mother teasing a child. Really, his tone so serious it didn't seem like he was lying. A chill crept up my back, and I instinctively leaned forward up close. I met Shi Guanyi's face with his lips pressed together, holding back a smile. "You scared me on purpose." Really, there is stagnant water at the bottom of the well, reflecting my face. I made to close the window, but he raised his hand to stop me, the corners of his lips slightly upturned. "Get some rest early." My face flushed red instantly, and I hurriedly closed the window. His silhouette was cast on the window, lingering for a moment before leaving. That night, I lay on the bed tossing and turning, my mind a complete mess. Shi Guanyi is really strange. I seem a bit strange too. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year. After the joke that happened during our nighttime visit to the back mountain last time, the Empress Dowager had Zhao Ning confined. Not only did you lose the royal dignity and the princess's honor, but you also took the lead in instigating young ladies from noble families and 2 court officials, and even dared to drag your imperial uncle into it. Have you gone mad? This was what Zhao Ning relayed in her letter, where she kept complaining about how boring the palace was and how pitiful she was. At the end of the letter, she invited me to the palace to play chess. I originally wanted to return the jade chess set Shi Guanyi gifted me while I was at it. But after opening the box, I immediately closed it again. Forget it. He is busy with important matters, and I might not even run into him anyway. Zhao Ning was happy to see me, but there really wasn't much fun in the palace. We played a game of chess, practiced calligraphy for a while, and in the end, with nothing else to do, we had no choice but to walk in the snow in the Imperial Garden. I passed by the place where I broke things off with Pei Wangjia on that mid-autumn night again. Back then, I was so sad I couldn't hold back my tears. Times have changed, and now I no longer think of him. Instead, I couldn't help but look toward the shaded area behind the trees. Shi Guanyi once stood there, witnessing all my embarrassment. Zhao Ning was complaining to me, "It is really too boring. You rarely leave your boudoir. Brother Pei hasn't been coming to see me much lately either. And your brother has recently been favored by my imperial uncle, so busy he can't tell north from south. The palace is really no fun. Doesn't Pei Wangjia love running to the palace all the time? He seems pretty idle lately, either delivering things to my mother on behalf of Madame Duke Pei, or discussing matters with my father in the name of Duke Pei. He comes 3 times every 5 days, and always has to walk past the backyard twice. After running into him twice by chance, I wised up and told the servant at the gate to report to me whenever he came. Now it is out of sight, out of mind, and I've returned all the gifts he sent. But I accepted all the rare trinkets. Shi Guanyi sent coral hairpins tributed from the South Sea, Lingnan lychees stored in the ice cellar. He also had someone tell me my handwriting was really ugly, and sent his calligraphy copybooks for me to practice from. Well, after seeing his handwriting, my writing that only resembled Pei Wangji's by half just wasn't worth looking at anymore. Since the Changshu Temple incident, I'd stopped to deliberately avoiding Shi Guanyi, but I hadn't seen him even once. He really seemed busy. I heard the court was being reorganized lately, with entire clans being exiled and their properties confiscated at the drop of a hat. The 6 ministries were sweating bullets before submitting their memorials. According to Meng Shun, Pei Wangjia had been cursing him in private quite a lot for being cruel and ruthless. I asked casually, "What about the prince?" He has been skipping meals and sleep. Hasn't left his study except to bathe and attend court. Jianing leaned close to me and whispered, "Actually, my recent frustration is also related to him. The palace isn't just boring. The atmosphere has been off lately too. It seems like Imperial Uncle and my mother Empress have had some kind of dispute." Before she could continue, we ran into the nanny who attended to the Empress Dowager. She bowed in greeting, and said the Empress Dowager had learned I'd entered the palace and invited me to sit with her for a while. I couldn't refuse, so I had no choice but to go with Jianing. The Empress Dowager was now nearly 40, elegant and dignified. Standing beside her was a woman in lavish attire with jade-like features and a face like flowers. She warmly held my hand and exchanged pleasantries with me. Seeing my respectful and obedient demeanor, she smiled and said, "If only Jianing were half as easy to manage as you." Jianing snuggled up beside her and acted spoiled, her cheeks puffed up as she said, "Mother praised cousin in front of me just yesterday, and today you are praising Shaoqi again. It is always other people's children who are better." The Empress Dowager smiled and rubbed her temples. You've already been married once, yet you still act like a half-grown child." As soon as she finished speaking, the hall fell dead silent. I was so shocked I held my breath. Ever since Jianing returned to the capital, my brother and the others and I had an unspoken understanding and never mentioned this matter. Jianing's face stiffened for a moment too, but she quickly leaned against the Empress Dowager's knee and said softly, "Your daughter just wants to stay by mother's side forever and be a child." The Empress Dowager lightly tapped the top of her head, her voice carrying authority without anger. "You must marry." Jianing slowly straightened up and lowered her head, no longer speaking. "I think the legitimate son of Duke Pei is quite good," a dignified Zhuang Yuan, someone worth entrusting yourself to. You should hurry up, especially since he seems to have some feelings for you too. Seeing she wasn't speaking, the Empress Dowager turned to me seeking agreement. Xiaoxi, don't you think so? I could only meekly answer yes. When I secretly glanced up to observe Jianing, she was also looking at me. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of her lips, the helplessness in her eyes impossible to dissolve. It seems she doesn't want to marry Pei Wangjia. But she didn't voice any objection either, instead showing tacit consent. In my memories, Zhao Ning as a child would do what she wanted, even if it meant getting hurt, and would give everything to get what she desired. She has always been someone determined to the point of stubbornness. Today I witnessed firsthand that even a princess of noble birth can be powerless over her own fate. But for a private conversation between mother and daughter, why did the Empress Dowager call me here? Sure enough, the Empress Dowager soon turned the conversation to me. You and Zhao Ning are about the same age, and you are not yet betrothed either, right? Why not let me make this decision on behalf of your parents? I have a nephew who is quite the fine young man, imperial mother. Before she could finish, Zhao Ning cut her off sharply and urgently. My chess game with Xiaoxi isn't finished yet, so I'll be taking her now. The Empress Dowager frowned with some displeasure but didn't continue further. Zhao Ning pulled me along at a rapid pace, and before we even left the hall, we ran straight into a figure in black. I hadn't seen Shi Guanyi for many days. The wariness in his eyes was instantly replaced by tenderness, and he gave me an almost imperceptible smile. What wind has blown Guanyi here as well? Perfect timing, about your marriage with Ruchu. Marriage. Well, that is right. Shi Guanyi is 24. Others his age have long since married and had children. It is about time he had a princess consort. Is it that young lady by the Empress Dowager's side? Chu Ruchu, Zhao Ning's cousin from her maternal grandfather's family. I stared blankly at Shi Guanyi, seeing only his gradually darkening eyes and clenched jaw. Zhao Ning quickly pulled me away. As we left the palace hall, I heard the Empress Dowager's harsh scolding from inside. Do you really think you can become the ruler of this realm? In the imperial garden, Zhao Ning dismissed the palace maids and sat with me in the pavilion, looking at each other in silence. She was no longer chattering away, but unusually quiet. I thought for a long time and still felt I should say something. Even if nothing could be changed, it is always good to have someone to talk to. I took her hand and asked softly, "Do you want to marry Pei Wangjia?" She raised her head, her eyes red like a rabbit is. No, I don't want to at all. But the Pei family has been nobility for generations, and now he holds an important position. Marrying him would greatly benefit the young emperor. As his eldest sister, what else can I do? Her face was full of helplessness, and I didn't know how to comfort her for the moment. Thinking of this little princess who had been surrounded by admirers since childhood and received endless love from the late emperor and empress, yet couldn't even decide her own marriage, I couldn't help but sigh. It was like this when I went for the marriage alliance with Wu Huan back then. I didn't expect that now I've returned. You still have no control over your own fate. Her eyes flickered slightly as she turned her head to look at me. No, I begged Father Emperor for the marriage alliance. Do you remember the year of my hairpin ceremony when I pestered your brother and the others to take me out of the palace to ride horses? The horse got spooked and rushed toward the cliff, and he saved me. That was my first time seeing Nail. Nail, the youngest son of the Wuhuan Chanyu, was once a renowned young prodigy of his time. So Zhao had already met him before going to Wuhuan. I had never seen a man so wild and unrestrained on horseback. He said this damn capital is full of vendors and buildings everywhere. You can't even ride to your heart's content. If there is a chance, he'd take me to Wuhuan. The grasslands there are vast, and you can gallop chasing the sun. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes as she gazed at the palace walls around her, her thoughts gradually drifting away. She didn't even notice when I got up and left. The wind was rather strong, and she was dressed thinly. I wanted to find a palace servant to fetch her a cloak. Before I could take 2 steps, my wrist was grabbed without a word. Shi Guanyi strode forward. only letting go after bringing me to a secluded corner. He leaned down slightly, his dark eyes meeting my evasive gaze. What did the Empress Dowager say to you? His breath fell densely on my face. I quickly turned my head away. The Empress Dowager wants to bestow a marriage upon me. Si Guanyi let out a light scoff. She really wants to control everyone's fate. Those were words of great disrespect. I paced about anxiously, afraid someone might overhear. But I was quickly pulled back by Shi Guanyi. Meng Shi. What do you think? What else could I think? If Jianing hadn't spoken up to interrupt, would the Empress Dowager have allowed me to refuse her marriage arrangement? Si Guanyi's eyelashes trembled. Somehow, I always felt he seemed a bit nervous. My courage grew even bolder. And I feigned obedience as I said, "It is not entirely out of the question. The Empress Dowager's nephew from her maiden family is quite handsome. Even Jianing has praised him. Oh right, he could even become related to you, Your Highness. He marries a Chu family daughter. I marry a Chu family son. We'd practically be half relatives." Shi Guanyi's Adam's apple bobbed, and he gritted his back teeth as he said harshly, "Got rid of one Pei Wangjia. And now here comes another Chu family nephew who doesn't know when to quit. Meng Shi, you really are a hot commodity that even dogs would drool over. Got rid of Pei Wangjia. What on earth was he talking about? Thou calling Pei Wangjia a dog was actually quite fitting." Seeing the confusion on my face, he didn't explain either. Just sighed and said, "The Chu family is no happy nest. Marriage is like a bargaining chip. In the Empress Dowager's eyes, your value lies solely in your identity as Chief Counselor Meng's daughter, useful for helping her revive her maiden family and seize back imperial power." A chill rose through my entire body. How could he dare say such things? Recalling how Jianing said the Empress Dowager had meddled in Shi Guanyi's marriage, and the recent stalemate in palace relations, what role was he playing in all of this? Was he an ambitious regent prince unwilling to relinquish power, or a supporter of the young emperor resisting interference from the maternal relatives? I racked my brains thinking. But Shi Guanyi suddenly straightened my hairpin, his fingers inadvertently brushing past the tip of my ear, sending a shiver through me. His voice softened. "Don't think about anything, and come to the palace less often lately." I nodded, and Shi Guanyi stopped talking, just staring at me intently. He looked really exhausted, his slender fingers rubbing between his brows, weariness in his eyes every time he looked up. I couldn't hold back my worry and asked, "Has Your Highness been very tired lately?" "A little," he said softly, leaning weakly against the wall. "But I feel much better just looking at you." A flush rose to my face, and fearing he'd see it, I hurriedly tried to leave. Shi Guanyi reached out and pulled me again. His strength was too great, and I wasn't prepared, so by the time I reacted, my elbow was already pressed against his firm, burning chest. It looked like I was throwing myself into his arms. But I didn't let go, and neither did Shi Guanyi. Our previous encounters had never been as intimate as this one. I could even sense the glimmer in his eyes, his face gradually lowering, drawing closer and closer to mine. I couldn't afford to think too much, steeled my heart and closed my eyes. But the next second, Shi Guanyi let go. His expression returned to normal, though his ears were still slightly flushed. He stepped back and said, "No rush. I'll have someone escort you out of the palace." "No rush for what?" Without giving me a chance to ask, he left me with only his retreating figure. It is just that his steps were hurried and chaotic, losing the composure he usually had. He is an upright gentleman. Meng Shun used 3 months' salary to buy fireworks. After having New Year's Eve dinner with my parents, he secretly snuck me out. The carriage drove all the way to the outskirts of the capital, where a large group of childhood playmates had already gathered. Of course, they were all his friends. Pei Wangjia came too, standing alone in the distance with his hands behind his back. Looking dejected, Meng Shun leaned close to my ear. "I specially invited Wangjia over. He hasn't been in a good mood lately, and things are really tense with his family." I wasn't interested in his affairs, But Meng Shun just had to keep talking without reading the room. Duke Pei is pushing him to propose to Zhouning, and the Empress Dowager and Zhouning's side have privately agreed. But he absolutely refuses, like he is possessed or something. He'd been longing and hoping for years, and now that she is finally back, he doesn't want to anymore. I scratched my ear. He has got issues. Meng Shun nodded. He does have issues. A few days ago, after getting drunk, he even asked me in tears. That girl he used to be close with fell for someone else. How could he make her change her mind? I thought about it for a long time and asked if that girl had any brothers. Get close to the future brother-in-law first, then wouldn't he have the advantage of being near the water to get the moon first? But then he cried even louder. Meme, with Meng Shun's lack of tact. It is not surprising at all that he is 23 and still has no girl interested in him. I'll go comfort him first. Don't go poking his sore spot right now. He is like a firecracker, the slightest spark and he'll cry. I nodded like a bobblehead, finally sending off this big Buddha. From afar, I saw Meng Shun step forward and pat Pei Wangji's shoulder. The latter met my gaze from a distance, pulling out a smile uglier than crying. It really was quite ugly. If he weren't the capital's acknowledged handsome man, I'd have suspected I was blind back then. Everyone knew each other. The young masters gathered in groups to chat idly, while the family members they brought along gathered together discussing trendy makeup. I sat on the cushion, bored out of my mind, deeply regretting that Zhouning couldn't leave the palace, when I suddenly heard her voice. Xiao Shi. I whipped my head around, only to see Zhouning waving at me vigorously. Behind her stood Shi Guanyi, upright as a pine. I thought I wouldn't see you until next year. Didn't expect that after just begging my imperial uncle a few times, he agreed to bring me out. Zhouning linked her arm with mine, smiling with curved brows and eyes. Compared to my last visit to the palace, she seemed to be in much better spirits. Remembering what Meng Shun had just told me about the Pei family intending to propose marriage, I reminded her. You and Pei Wangjia. It is fine. Her voice was light and cheerful. Imperial uncle has already sorted it out for me. The Empress mother probably won't pressure me anymore. Hearing this, I let out a long sigh of relief and said with emotion, that is good. You can be happy again. The voices around were noisy, but I seemed to hear Zhouning say in a very soft voice, no, I haven't been able to feel happy for a long time now. I gripped her hand tightly and quietly walked with her for a while like this. When Meng Shun called us to set off fireworks, Zhouning volunteered to light them. We gathered together, looking expectantly at the night sky. In an instant, fireworks dazzled like falling rain, speckling the world with starlight. I was originally standing beside Meng Shun when suddenly, a hand reached out from behind and pulled me to the back of the crowd. Before I could cry out in surprise, I smelled the familiar scent of pine and snow. Zi Guanyi held my hand loosely, with a grip I could easily break free from. But I didn't. Instead, I held his hand even tighter. At the moment when the fireworks were at their most brilliant, the night sky was so bright, it was startling. I turned my head, and he was looking at me too, smiling unrestrainedly. Pei Wangjia at the front of the crowd seemed to turn around looking for me. Shi Guanyi glanced from the corner of his eye, and that familiar playful glint flashed in his gaze again. He lowered his head and kissed my trembling eyes. He did it on purpose. Our palms were damp with sweat. Impossible to tell who was the nervous one. My heart was pounding wildly. He wasn't any better off. His lips were trembling even more than my eyelids. The moment the night sky returned to quiet darkness, we tacitly put distance between us. I looked up, and Pei Wangji was still staring at me, his expression dazed. Si Guanyi noticed my gaze, secretly scratched my palm with his fingertip again, and clicked his tongue lightly. Why don't your eyes just grow on him? I pushed him away and returned to Meng Shun's side. Apart from us and Pei Wangji, no one noticed this little interlude. After everyone exchanged New Year wishes, they all headed home to stay up with their families for the New Year's Eve vigil. After Zhao Ning and Shi Guanyi got on the carriage, he suddenly called out to me in front of everyone. Meng Shi, come here. Everyone exchanged glances. And I froze in place too until my brother gave me a push. The prince is calling you, hurry up. I walked forward, and he poked his head out from behind the curtain, producing a large rabbit lantern as if by magic. Zhao Ning wanted to give this to you. Zhao Ning was confused inside the carriage. What lantern? Where did it come from? I gave it. Fortunately, with the wooden walls of the carriage between them, those standing a few steps away didn't hear. Under a dozen gazes, I took the lantern, my face flushing as I said softly, "Oh, thank you, Your Highness." He raised his sleeve, blocking others' view of him, and his eyes instantly became gentle and deep. In a voice only I could hear, he said, "Next year, I'll stay up with you for the New Year's Eve vigil." Only family would stay up together for the New Year's Eve vigil. As the carriage drove away, Meng Shun asked me with a suspicious look, "Did the prince just say something to you?" I didn't know how to answer, so I just hurried to push him onto the carriage. Seeing this, Pei Wangjia said that the Pei family's coachman had already returned to the residence ahead of them. Before Meng Shun could invite him up, I hurriedly said, "Oh my. This lantern is really too big. We shouldn't squeeze young Lord Pei. You'd better take another family's carriage." His hand resting on the carriage frame dropped weakly. In the end, he said nothing and watched us leave. In the carriage, Meng Shun's expression was grave. Several times he stole glances at me, wanting to speak but holding back. I thought he had noticed something was off, so I said, "Brother, is there something you want to say?" If Meng Shun had grown suspicious, I didn't plan to keep hiding it from him any longer. But unexpectedly, his eyes turned red. "Xiaoxi, I need to tell you something. You should brace yourself first. That beast from the Duke Wen's manor seems to have returned." My head buzzed, and even my breathing became erratic. No matter how Meng Shun patted my back, I couldn't calm down. After a long while, I finally managed to squeeze out a question through clenched teeth, trembling. How could this be? The Wen family promised he would never be allowed back to the capital. The Wen family is at the height of their power now and highly favored by the Empress Dowager. But don't worry. When we get back, I'll discuss it with father. After the new year, we'll go to the palace to plead with that person. Even if it costs me my career, I'll make him get out of the capital. I closed my eyes in pain and asked the Empress Dowager. She won't be easy to persuade when it involves the Wen family's military power. No, we'll plead with Shi Guanyi. No, I nearly screamed. He can't know about this. Meng Shun's face looked terrible, and he said in a hoarse voice, he already knew about it from the start. The tears I'd been holding in my eyes came gushing out. My parents had kept this matter tightly under wraps for the sake of my reputation. Apart from the Meng and Wen families, even Pei Wangjia didn't know. How could he know? He was the last person I wanted to find out. Fragmented scenes flashed through my mind, the broken umbrella, the nauseating touch, and the man's whimpering pleas for mercy. My vision went black, and I lost consciousness. I had a very, very long dream, climbing trees to pick fruit, rabbit lanterns, a childhood of being ignored. Then, to the winter of the year I came of age. I entered the palace as usual, but heard from the nanny beside Zhao Ning that Pei Wangjia and Meng Shun had secretly snuck her out of the palace to go horseback riding. I had long grown used to being forgotten, and sat blankly in her palace for a long time. Going home too early would make my parents suspicious, and I was afraid they'd take it out on Meng Shun. After waiting a while, dusk was approaching, and a light drizzle began to fall. I ran into Wen Yi, the only son of Duke Wen, at the palace gates. He had originally been a study companion to Shi Guanyi as well, but was later kicked out by Shi Guanyi due to his paranoid and twisted personality. He said, "Your brother went out of the palace with Zhao Ning, right? I'll take you to find him." I politely declined, only saying I was heading back to the Meng residence. The Meng family's carriage that had been parked in front of the palace was nowhere to be found, so I walked home with my umbrella. Later, he blocked my way, approaching step by step, cornering me in a dead-end alley with no escape. He crushed my umbrella underfoot, a pair of hands crawling over my body like snakes and scorpions. I couldn't break free, desperately begging him for mercy. But he leaned close to my ear with a nauseating voice. Xiao Shi, none of them can see you. Only I can, compared to Zhao Ning, I like you more. What appeared last were Meng Shun's blood-red eyes, and his choked apology. It is all my fault. It is all my fault for never taking you with me. Oh right. He seemed to be wearing a black cloak that day, wrapping around my body, holding me tight. I was unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. Mother sat by the bed constantly wiping her tears, while Meng Shun and father paced back and forth discussing countermeasures. The new year was supposed to be festive and lively, but I ruined it all. The Wen family is already a noble house with military power in their grasp, and now with the Empress Dowager backing them, they're second to none. Father, don't act rashly. At worst, your son will go kill that beast and fight to the bitter end. What nonsense are you spouting? What about your sister's reputation then? You think your old man was fucking scared of the Wen family's power back then? If we kill Wen Yi, will the Wen family let it go? Do you want everyone to know? So your sister can never hold her head up again? Turns out father, that old stubborn man who always preached benevolence, righteousness, propriety and trust, could also curse so viciously. I weakly sat up and sent them all out. Seeing my pale face, Meng Shun raised his sleeve to cover his reddened eyes and said, "Rest well. Your brother will take care of it for you." The not-so-close siblings gradually grew up, and that mischievous boy had somehow become the tree that sheltered me. I forced a smile. I am fine, doing great. After that, I feigned illness again and refused to see anyone, even declining Zhao Ning's invitations. When the maid brought a letter into the room, I stared at the blank envelope and felt like crying. Shi Guanyi never signed his name. Actually, I missed him a little bit. I opened it full of anticipation, and the moment I saw the contents, I almost forgot to breathe. Little Shi, do you miss me? Long time no see. It wasn't Shi Guanyi's handwriting. I hurriedly threw away the paper, but no matter how much I washed my hands, they still felt unclean. That beast still won't leave me alone. I didn't tell my family about receiving the letter. I couldn't really let Meng Shun risk his life to stand up for me. As long as I don't go out, it should be fine. Right. On the 6th day of the new year, the Empress Dowager just had to summon me to the palace at this time, and the nanny who delivered the decree specifically instructed that no one was to accompany me. Father cursed the old hag in rage, and mother insisted on accompanying me to the palace no matter what. Meng Shun said, "Don't go. Once the New Year holiday ends tomorrow, I'll go to the palace to apologize to the prince and request a decree. I'll bear all the punishment." I told them to rest easy. Once the carriage drops me at the palace gate, I'll go straight to find Zhao Ning first. With her there, no one would dare touch me. Before leaving, I hid a silver hairpin in my sleeve. The eunuch leading the way today kept his head lowered respectfully, his voice weathered and hoarse. "Would the young lady please walk slower? This servant has trouble with his legs." Seeing his limp as he walked, I nodded in agreement. When we reached the fork between the princess's palace and the Empress Dowager's residence, I said, "May I go to the princess's palace to change first?" He coughed twice. "The princess is currently feeding fish by Taie Pool. She also said she has something for you and asked this servant to bring you there." "Thank you for your trouble." I followed behind him at an unhurried pace. When we reached a secluded corner, I stepped forward quickly and pressed the hairpin against his throat. "Wen Yi, the princess never feeds fish. Zhao Ning had fallen into the water as a child and never goes near the lakeside." The man let out a strange laugh, turning around fearlessly, looking me up and down with a disgusting gaze. "Finally I get to see you, dear little sister." The hairpin had already pierced half an inch into his neck, blood gushing out, yet he seemed to feel no pain at all. "You dare kill me, your parents, your brother, the entire Meng household will be buried with me." Wen Yi has always been a madman. I heard back then he was beaten up and thrown out of the palace by Shi Guanyi for forcing himself on a palace maid. I suppressed the fear deep in my bones and steadied my voice. "You think I wouldn't dare? Wen Yi, You should be grateful the Wen family sent you out of the capital back then. Otherwise, you beast would have died by my hand long ago. He laughed as if he'd heard a joke, doubling over with laughter. That is exactly why I like you, Meng Shi. Everyone thinks you are a pushover, but you are actually a tough nut to crack. The way you struggled that day really got my blood pumping, Tess. Too bad I didn't succeed. I pushed the hairpin in another half-inch, only to hear him feign begging for mercy. Dear sister, I am really scared now. How would I dare touch you? What if Shi Guanyi comes and breaks my other leg later? He smiled slyly. You don't know yet, do you? Shi Guanyi is even more of a beast than me. He has been lusting after you for so many years. Huh. I really should have tasted what you are like. I felt a wave of dizziness, trying hard to steady myself, but my hands began to tremble. What do you mean? When Yi grabbed the hairpin back, his expression twisted. He even gave up inheriting the throne because of you, and you are still kept in the dark. Ha 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 ha. Come on, kill me if you've got the guts. I am just a cripple, so it doesn't matter, and it is fine if you are not afraid of paying with your life, but can the Meng family get away unscathed? What about Shi Guanyi, who the Empress Dowager has her eyes on? That old hag is just waiting for me to die here so she can scheme to bring Shi Guanyi down from his pedestal. Look, I knew everything yet still came. I really wanted to like you so badly. Whatever Shi Guanyi wants, I have to snatch it away. Who told him to be so high and mighty, always looking at me like I am a fly? If you want to blame someone, blame him, before you die. Let's have some fun. Just like in a nightmare, he lunged straight at me and gripped my throat. The sudden pain made me lose some strength in my grip on the hairpin, as his disgusting lips were about to press against mine. I closed my eyes and gripped the hairpin tightly once more. This time, I drove it all the way in. The grip on my neck finally loosened. Wen Yi reached back to clutch his own blood-spurting neck. You, how dare you? He could no longer utter a single complete sentence. The moment he collapsed completely, I too lost all my strength and slumped to the ground. My face and body were covered in horrifying blood. Xiao Shi. I seemed to hear someone calling me, so I raised my head. I had never seen Shi Guanyi in such a disheveled state. His hair bun had come loose from running, his face written with fear and unease. He kicked that beast's corpse aside, slowly crouched down, and cupped my face as if he had found a precious treasure. His voice sounded even more trembling than mine. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I threw myself into his arms and burst into tears. Breathing in the familiar, pleasant pine snow fragrance on him, it took a very, very long time before my emotions gradually calmed down. I lifted my head from his embrace, choking out. Shi Guanyi. I killed someone. He raised his sleeve and gently wiped the blood from my face. You didn't kill anyone. Today when you entered the palace, you were stopped by Jianing, who was waiting at the gate. She kept you playing chess all day. I froze, asking haltingly word by word, what do you mean? You are going to take the blame for me. Shi Guanyi showed a reassuring smile, his voice low. I am the regent who kills without batting an eye. Who would dare touch me? Remember to change your clothes later. I'll have Jianing escort you out of the palace. Jianing arrived quickly. Shi Guanyi pulled her aside and said a few words. Her eyes suddenly reddened, and without another word, she moved to take me away. Before leaving, I turned back to look at Shi Guanyi. He had pulled out the hairpin and was stabbing his own sword into the same spot. Noticing my gaze, he straightened up and smiled at me, seeming to say something. But Jianing was wailing too loudly in my ear. I couldn't hear clearly. Back at the Meng residence, I explained everything to them from beginning to end. Meng Shun was so furious, he threw 3 teacups and cursed out every foul word he'd ever learned in his life. Finally, he rubbed my hair as if to comfort me. Well killed, my sister is incredible. I was a bit worried and asked him, what about Shi Guanyi? What will happen to him? Meng Shun could see the court situation more clearly than I could. His expression darkened as he simply said, It'll be difficult. There is something I never got to tell you. He made me keep it from you. Actually, that day the one who saved you was him. I nodded, I know. On New Year's Eve night, I remembered everything. The black robe covering my body was Xiaguani's. I am sorry, Shaoqi, that day. We went horseback riding without you. By the time the prince sent someone to drag me over, you were curled up on the ground crying so hard you couldn't open your eyes. For the sake of your reputation, he made me claim that I was the one who saved you. I didn't expect Shi Guanyi to be someone who hides his merits and fame. I slept very restlessly that night. When I woke up, the capital had changed overnight. Duke Wen, an old minister who had served 2 dynasties, wept bitterly at court, saying his son born in his old age had died under unclear circumstances. This was his only son. Not only had his leg been broken by the young and hot-headed Shi Guanyi back then, but now his throat had been slit by his sword. The Empress Dowager, who hadn't appeared at court for a long time, listened from behind the curtain and sternly declared she would thoroughly investigate this matter. The ministers went with the flow, raising the banner of cleansing the emperor's side, and attacked Shi Guanyi en masse. Charges of brutal slaughter and plotting rebellion to seize power were all pinned on him. The Empress Dowager dabbed at her tears hypocritically. Guanyi is someone I've watched grow up since childhood. He must have had a reason for killing young Master Wen. I heard that Chief Minister Meng's daughter. She had long been wary of my father, and wanted to take this chance to drag the Meng family down. He offended this prince. He deserved to die. Si Guanyi interrupted with a calm expression, stirring up the crowd's anger once more. My father had wanted to speak up for him, but fearing it would drag me into this, he had no choice but to drop it. Shi Guanyi was thrown into the imperial prison. To console Duke Wen for the pain of losing his son, the Empress Dowager first ordered 30 strikes of the paddle. The Empress Dowager is truly ruthless. She ordered every strike to land on his spine, yet he didn't make a single sound. My heart ached terribly, and my tears just wouldn't stop. For my sake, why did he have to go this far? If he is left with lasting damage, if he can never turn things around in that sunless imperial prison. The more I thought, the more afraid I became. Tossing and turning, tears soaking my pillow. The lamp in the room was extinguished. I heard my own sobs stifled in my throat. Suddenly, someone knocked softly on the door. I thought it was Meng Shun, but when I opened the door, I saw the pale-faced Shi Guanyi. The snow outside hadn't melted, and he was dressed so thinly. I hurriedly stepped aside to let him in, having heard from father that he was injured. I held back again and again from reaching out to embrace him. He seemed to read my intention, opened his arms toward me, and smiled gently. You can hug me. It doesn't hurt. Tears surged once more as I pressed against his burning chest, choking back sobs. Liar, how could it not hurt? I said. I could clearly see the blood seeping through his back in dark stains. Just looking at it was heart-wrenching. Shi Guanyi held me tightly and suddenly asked, Meng Shaoqi, do you want to become empress? Has Xia Guanyi lost his mind? My hands, which had been loosely resting on his back, suddenly tightened. I heard him let out a muffled groan, his tone aggrieved. Sh, be gentler. I quickly let go, looking into his ink-black eyes, and said, I wouldn't dare. And I don't want to either. I know you don't want to either. But if this is the only way to save your life, you might as well try. Having seen so many sides of Shi Guanyi, when he sat alone on that high platform, he looked the most lonely. I must be crazy too, for Pei Wangjia. It could at most be called defying convention. But for Shi Guanyi, I wouldn't be afraid even of plotting to seize power and usurp the throne. He smiled to himself, playing with my loose hair, and said, Everyone thinks I want to don the imperial yellow robe. Only you believe I don't want it. They're all pushing me tonight. I really did consider it. But seeing you scared like a rabbit, forget it. I won't do it. How could Shi Guanyi make plotting to usurp the throne sound as simple as eating a meal? Wait, wasn't he locked up in the imperial prison? How did he manage to escape from the palace? I grabbed his lapel and asked, How did you get here? Your brother opened the back door for me, and I snuck in. I am injured and can't climb over walls. No. I am asking, how did you get out of the imperial prison? Meng Shaozi. He smiled with his eyes curved. How come you are only thinking of that now, dummy? He handed me a card handwritten by Zhao Ning, held me for a good while before leaving. Shi Guanyi didn't lie to me. The regent who holds power over the entire court really does have heaven-reaching abilities. The next day, court officials led by Shi Guanyi listed 34 charges against Wen Yi and the Duke of Wen's manor. The Meng family relatives were among them, and even Pei Wangji submitted a memorial. Meanwhile, Shi Guanyi was already sitting in the Empress Dowager's chambers, dressed immaculately, drinking tea. Zhao Ning and I were also there. She seemed to have been crying, her eyes swollen like walnuts. The Empress Dowager had just returned from the main hall, her face showing nothing but exhaustion. The moment she saw Shi Guanyi, cracks appeared in her delicate makeup. Shi Guanyi, you really are capable. Both the court and the inner palace have been infiltrated by your forces. Indeed, I didn't misjudge you. The Empress Dowager is mistaken. Where am I mistaken? Yes, I lost to you, but for His Majesty, for the nation. Fighting to the death was worth it. Sister-in-law, Shi Guanyi unhurriedly took a sip of tea and said, My way of appreciating tea was something you taught me when I was a child. The Empress Dowager scoffed. What is the point of telling me this now? Ever since my son was born, you've harbored wolfish ambitions. You deserve death. She spoke through gritted teeth. Shi Guanyi watched her contorted face steadily and only said, If I harbored wolfish ambitions, I wouldn't have protected your son when you tested me using the assassination during the Mid-Autumn Festival. You knew? Then why did you? The Empress Dowager shook her head in disbelief. Impossible. If you didn't have such intentions, why didn't you follow my arrangement and marry into the Chu family? Why did you dismiss Old Song from his post? Why have you been making such drastic moves to reform the court recently? You are the one forcing me to suspect you. Shi Guanyi's wounds hadn't healed yet. His complexion was slightly pale, and even his voice had weakened somewhat. An elder sister-in-law is like a mother. When I was 20, I already told you there was a girl I wouldn't marry anyone but. And you even agreed to propose on my behalf back then. You've probably forgotten. Have you forgotten why Imperial Brother suppressed the Chu family at every turn when he was on the throne? They're ambitious, scheming to have imperial relatives interfere in politics. You think they're your son's backing, but he is such a young child. If I am pulled down, you can only watch helplessly as he is devoured alive and turned into a puppet. Old Song was embezzling, and half the silver ended up in your pocket. Shouldn't he be dealt with? Before, I was busy stabilizing the borders, but the court was an empty shell corroded by parasites. When minor officials were investigated, they'd kill themselves out of guilt, making it forever impossible to trace back to the root. I took on the reputation of being cruel and killing indiscriminately in my own name. It is fine. His Majesty remains graciously benevolent and noble. If I don't clear out this filth for your son, how can he sit securely on this throne? Both Jianing and I were shaken by what we heard. The Empress Dowager was forced back step by every word, until she finally collapsed straight onto the ground, her lips mumbling that it was impossible. Shi Guanyi bent down to help her up, his voice clear and bright. I never thought of taking that seat, not when I was Crown Prince, nor when I was assisting His Majesty. Nor do I care about my reputation in life or after death. Killing traitors, beheading incompetent officials, supporting the new emperor. I only do what I believe is right. I later asked Shi Guanyi, you were already prepared, so why did you take that beating for nothing? He looked somewhat sad, pulled me into his arms and said, I thought she wouldn't hit me. When I was little and the crown prince struck my palms, she was the one who shielded me behind her. Driven by desire, once someone stands on the opposing side of one's interests, people will change. The Empress Dowager, having believed slander too readily, was sent to a nunnery in the outskirts to calm her mind. The noble families led by the Wen family were dealt with. Shi Guanyi came to the Meng residence to propose before his injuries had even healed. The betrothal gifts sent over piled up in the courtyard with no room to step. Mother looked at the gift list with worry, saying even 3 Hmong families combined couldn't produce a dowry to match it. When Shi Guanyi heard this, he made another sweeping gesture and sent over 36 carriers of dowry. On the day I married, I sat in the sedan chair, looking at my family's reluctant faces, and tears fell as I hid behind the wedding fan. Pei Wangjia, in his silver armor, cried even harder than I did. I heard he was to depart today to guard the frontier, and Shi Guanyi, to sever his lingering feelings, specially permitted him to witness my wedding ceremony. After marriage, Shi Guanyi remained the pillar by the young emperor's side, only he said the child grew more mischievous as he got older, always climbing onto his lap instead of sitting on the dragon throne during morning court. I hope we don't have a boy later, one who can't even sit still for an hour. I laughed and teased. Could you even sit still when you were 3 or 4? I couldn't, Shi Guanyi said honestly. Before I was made crown prince, I was even more mischievous than the young emperor. He had suppressed his youthful nature, carrying far too many burdens. Only during that hunt did I catch a glimpse of the wild unruliness that was in his bones. Of course, later on he lived more and more true to himself, more and more like his old self. Sometimes I couldn't help but ask, "How old are you, Shi Guanyi?" He smiled and pressed me down onto the bed, his lips and tongue scorching hot. Why don't you try and find out? Shi Guanyi's perspective. I never knew what I wanted since I was little. My imperial brother, coughing so hard he could barely breathe, would always pull me to his bedside and say earnestly, "Guanyi, this empire can only rely on you from now on." Enrolled in studies at 6, rising at the hour of yin, learning classics and history, day after day. I didn't understand, nor did I like it, I just did as I was told. A moment's slacking earned me the ruler. Later I had a few dull-witted study companions. They feared and dreaded me, trembling with their heads down whenever they saw me. During breaks, they would gather far away from me to fight crickets. The imperial brother said, "You were born different from them." It seems I was born with a bad fate. Later on, I met Meng Shi, always falling behind the crowd, jogging to catch up, then being left behind again. What kind of noble lady acts like this? Meek and timid, like a quail. But what difference is there between her and me? One sitting alone on a high platform, one standing in a corner. So I started observing her. Observing her suppressed grievances, the hem of her skirt clutched tightly. Not even a lantern like Zhao Ning's that she envied. No one gave her one. I called out to Pei Wangjia, who was carrying a rabbit lantern with a stupid look on his face. Zhao Ning hates rabbits the most. Whatever you do, don't give this to her. Such a little girl, just a shabby lantern, and she was so happy her eyes turned red. Day after day passed again. On the day of her hairpin ceremony, I crouched on the high wall of the Hmong residence, secretly watching her. How did the little girl grow up and reach the age for marriage? Getting married. I think I finally know what I want. It was raining that day. That idiot from the Wen family came to beg for mercy, pestering me for a long time before I finally sent him away. Only then did I notice that Zhao Ning, who always loved causing trouble, wasn't there. And the study companions were nowhere to be seen either. The servants were terrified, saying Zhao Ning had secretly snuck out of the palace to play. They must have forgotten to bring her along again. And she is probably still waiting foolishly in the princess's hall. The rain is getting heavier. I wonder if she brought an umbrella. As the crown prince, I must show compassion for my subjects. But when I brought an umbrella over, she had already left. Meng Shun wasn't around again, so just to be safe, I climbed onto the Hmong residence wall to check if she got home. Scattered cries came from deep in the alley. The man's pleas for mercy grew weaker, yet I couldn't stop no matter what. Only when the crying stopped did my sanity return. I rushed to her side. She was curled up in the corner, almost about to lose consciousness. Just as I was about to wipe the blood splattered on her face, she suddenly burst into heart-wrenching sobs. I took off my cloak to cover her, and sent people to drag back Meng Shun, who was still merrily galloping around. I told him not to say I was the one who saved her. I don't want her marrying me out of gratitude. Imperial brother was truly furious this time. making me kneel in the ancestral hall for 3 days and 3 nights. He was helped in to see me. Do you want to break the hearts of the veteran ministers? How can I feel at ease handing the realm to you? I don't want it anyway. This time he was truly enraged, coughing up a mouthful of blood onto his dragon robe. Only then did I learn that the only force capable of standing against the Wuhuan was the Wen family army. Now Duke Wen has taken sick leave, and no one is confident they can command his troops. Then I'll go. Imperial brother was enraged by me again, shouting intermittently, "You go. If you go, who will sit on the dragon throne in the future?" Imperial sister-in-law is still carrying a dragon heir. Far more legitimate than me. He sighed and said, Imperial brother doesn't have much time left. Even if it is a boy, there won't be time to see how his character turns out. I still want to hand the empire over to you. I shook my head firmly, then I'll serve as regent. I definitely won't let him be raised into a good-for-nothing. Great, I don't have to be emperor anymore. However, I still didn't get to go to Wuhuan. Zhao Ning volunteered for a marriage alliance. War with Wuhuan was inevitable sooner or later. I didn't want her to suffer needless heartbreak when that happened. So I tried to dissuade her for a long time. But she said, Imperial uncle, even if the outcome is destined, I still want to try. I couldn't say another word to dissuade her. The day the little emperor was born, everything was settled. I knelt before Imperial brother, begging him to propose marriage on my behalf. Not an imperial decree of marriage, a proposal. Imperial brother said to wait until Imperial sister-in-law recovered, so as not to be lacking in etiquette and slight the young lady. I waited and waited, then Imperial brother passed away. Imperial sister-in-law held the swaddled infant and begged me. Guanyi, the borders are now in chaos, the court is unstable, my maternal family has declined, the little emperor can only be entrusted to you. Seeing her crying like pear blossoms in the rain, I thought, let's wait a bit longer. When the world is at peace, when the seas are calm and rivers clear, I'll personally go to propose. For 3 years, I barely got a full night's sleep. Endless memorials to read, countless military affairs to review. She never entered the palace again, and I could never find the time to climb the walls of the Hmong residence anymore. Go pray before the Buddha, pray to see her once, pray to have your wish fulfilled. The Buddha only heard the first half. I really did see her, hiding behind the Buddha statue, spying on her making vows of eternal love with someone else. I no longer believe in gods or Buddha. A secret letter came from Jianing, saying the Wuhuan are mustering troops and training horses, ready to make a move. Now that our nation is powerful, whoever is sent will gain military merit. Who should go? Pei Wangjia. Then he won't go to the Hmong family to discuss marriage. And he used to like Jianing so much. Naturally, he won't miss this opportunity. I openly admit my own wickedness. If Jianing can stake everything on one gamble, why can't I fight for what I want too? As for the man Jianing likes, I'll leave him to her to deal with. If you can't bear to let him go, then I'll let you both leave. She went to the dungeon and argued endlessly with that man. One wanted to let go of everything and live in seclusion in the countryside. The other was determined to take revenge and revive their tribe. When she finally came out, her hands were covered in blood. She said to me, crying, "Those not of our kind are sure to have different hearts. Royal uncle, I couldn't bear it, but I killed him." In the face of family and national hatred, love shatters at the slightest touch. So it turns out Jianing is the one most suited to be emperor. Pei Wangjia indeed didn't disappoint me. Though seeing Meng Shi's sad expression didn't feel good for me either. Whatever. My public identity now is the cruel and ruthless regent anyway. Not a good person. Jianing had nightmares all night, so I took her to Changshu Temple to perform a soul-releasing ritual for that person. Meng Shi was there too. She met my gaze from afar, her face terribly flushed. She'd also drawn a clear line with Pei Wangjia, and seemed less afraid of me now. I suddenly felt the gods and Buddha were quite looking out for me. Maybe believing in them wouldn't hurt. Others say I want to seize power and the throne, want to don the imperial yellow robe. After being lost in statecraft and morality for so many years, I finally understood what I truly wanted. I have a bright pearl, long locked away by worldly toils. Today the dust clears and light emerges, illuminating mountains and rivers in full bloom. At last my wish is fulfilled.